The Connecticut sun blazed overhead as I lay sprawled across the decorative river rocks, my spine twisted at an angle that sent ice through my veins. My father Harold towered above me, his face purple with rage, spittle flying as he roared those words that would haunt me forever. Tyler stood on the deck above that familiar smirk playing on his lips, while our mother Diane shrieked about his ruined birthday celebration. Party guests formed a semicircle, their whispers buzzing like wasps as I struggled to move to speak to do anything except lie there like a broken doll, terror consuming me whole. 20 minutes earlier, I'd pulled into my parents' circular driveway with dread pooling in my stomach. Tyler's 30th birthday party was in full swing, and I knew exactly what awaited me inside that colonial mansion. The reading of Grandmother Rose's will 3 days prior had shattered our family's carefully maintained facade. She'd left me everything: the jewelry empire, the properties, the investments, while Tyler received only a letter explaining why. I'd barely made it through the foyer when Tyler materialized, bourbon heavy on his breath. His wife Lauren stood near the kitchen, her eyes downcast as always. Their 2 kids, 8-year-old Mason and 6-year-old Sophia, played in the corner, carefully avoiding their father's line of sight. "Well, well, if it isn't the golden child," Tyler slurred, blocking my path. "Come to gloat about stealing my birthright." "I didn't steal anything," I said quietly, trying to sidestep him. "Grandmother made her choice." "Her choice?" His voice rose dangerously. "You poisoned her against me. Always playing the victim, weren't you, poor little Bridget, so fragile, so perfect?" The party guests pretended not to notice as Tyler followed me onto the second-floor deck. The Hartford skyline glittered in the distance, but all I could focus on was the fury radiating from my brother. We danced this dance before. Tyler's rage, my attempts at placation, our parents' willful blindness. "You've taken everything from me," he snarled, backing me against the railing. "First Mom and Dad's attention, then grandmother's love, now the entire fortune. When does it end?" "Tyler, please. Let's discuss this when you're sober." "Don't patronize me." His hands shot out, connecting with my shoulders. Time slowed as I felt the railing give way behind me. Tyler's eyes widened for a split second, surprise, regret, before gravity claimed me. The deck rushed away as I tumbled backward, my arms windmilling uselessly through empty air. The impact drove every molecule of oxygen from my lungs. Pain exploded through my lower back as I connected with the landscaping rocks my mother had insisted on installing last spring. Above me, faces appeared along the deck edge. Shocked guests, my stone-faced parents and Tyler, whose expression had already shifted from shock to calculation. What happened next would later prove crucial, though I didn't know it at the time. Tyler's best friend Marcus, who'd installed our home security system, slipped quietly into the house. While everyone focused on my motionless form, he accessed the main panel and began deleting footage. His fingers flew across the keyboard, erasing the evidence of Tyler's push, replacing it with a convenient gap in the recording. My mother's shrill voice cut through the chaos. "Bridget Marie Donovan, get up this instant. You're making a scene at your brother's party." I tried to respond, to move, to do anything, but my legs remained stubbornly unresponsive, as if they belonged to someone else entirely. Panic clawed at my throat as the reality set in. Something was terribly, catastrophically wrong. Harold descended the deck stairs with deliberate slowness, his Italian leather shoes crunching on the gravel path. "Enough of this performance," he growled. "You've embarrassed this family enough for one day." "Dad," I whispered the word barely audible. I can't feel my legs." "Drama queen just like always." Diane chimed in, her perfectly manicured hands ringing. "First you steal Tyler's inheritance. Now you pretend to be hurt at his celebration. Have you no shame?" The crowd of partygoers had grown larger, their designer clothes and champagne flutes creating a surreal backdrop to my nightmare. Among them, I spotted Dr. Patricia Winters, our longtime family physician, who made no move to help. They all just watched, waiting to see how far I'd take this supposed act. Tyler appeared at Harold's shoulder, his earlier panic replaced by practiced concern. "Should we call someone?" he asked loud enough for witnesses to hear. I mean, if she's really hurt. She's fine, Harold snapped. Bridget's always been theatrical. Remember when she was 12 and claimed she broke her wrist? Nothing but a sprain. I remembered that incident differently. Tyler had twisted my arm behind my back until something snapped, then convinced everyone I'd fallen off my bike. The emergency room doctor had seemed suspicious, but one look at our family's reputation and bank account had silenced any questions. Please, I managed tears streaming down my face. Something's really wrong. I can't move. Can't or won't. Diane's accusation hung in the air like poison. That's when I heard the sirens approaching. Someone, I never found out who, had possessed enough humanity to call 911. The sound grew louder and I saw my father's jaw clench with annoyance. Perfect, he muttered. Now we'll have to deal with this circus. Marcus reappeared, giving Tyler a subtle nod. Mission accomplished. Whatever evidence might have existed of Tyler's assault was now digital dust. My brother's shoulders relaxed incrementally, and he even managed to work up some crocodile tears. Bridget, please, Tyler said, playing to the audience. I'm sorry we argued. Just tell them you're okay, so we can all move past this. But I wasn't okay. As the sirens grew louder and my family's false concern intensified, I lay trapped in my own body, understanding, with crystal clarity, that this wasn't just about a fall or even attempted murder. This was about a lifetime of violence carefully hidden behind mahogany doors and charitable donations, about a family so poisoned by its own secrets that attempted murder was preferable to public scrutiny, about parents who would sacrifice their daughter's safety to protect their son's reputation. The paramedics were almost here. For the first time in my 28 years, help was coming. Real help, not the kind that could be bought or intimidated into silence. As I stared up at Tyler's calculated expression, I made a decision that would change everything. This time, I wouldn't protect them. This time, the truth would finally have its day. The ambulance doors burst open and outstepped paramedic Sarah Chen, her experienced eyes immediately cataloging the scene. Unlike the party guests in their designer clothes, Sarah wore practical navy blues and carried herself with the no-nonsense efficiency of someone who'd seen too much to be fooled by pretty lies. Everyone step back, Sarah commanded, her voice cutting through the chatter. Her partner, a younger man named Rodriguez, began unloading equipment while Sarah knelt beside me. Hi there, I'm Sarah, she said gently, her fingers already checking my pulse. Can you tell me your name? Bridget. I whispered, grateful for the first kind voice I'd heard since hitting the ground. Okay, Bridget, I need you to stay very still. Can you tell me what happened? Before I could answer, Harold interjected, She's being dramatic. My daughter has a history of attention-seeking behavior. We're very sorry you were called out here for nothing. Sarah's dark eyes flicked to my father, and something in her expression hardened. Sir, I'll need you to step back while I examine my patient. Do you know who I am? Harold's voice carried that familiar edge of threat wrapped in privilege. I'm Harold Donovan. I sit on the hospital board. This is a family matter. I don't care if you're the Pope, Sarah replied evenly. Step back now or I'll have police remove you from my scene. The shock on Harold's face would have been comical under different circumstances. People didn't speak to him that way, ever. Sarah turned her attention back to me, her hands gentle but thorough as she examined my spine. When she reached the impact point, I couldn't suppress a gasp of pain. Where did you fall from? She asked. The deck, I managed. Second floor. Sarah's gaze traveled up to the broken railing, calculating the distance. Her frown deepened. That's at least a 15-foot drop onto these rocks. Rodriguez, get me a backboard and cervical collar. Now. This is ridiculous, Diane shrilled. She's fine. Tell them you're fine, Bridget. But Sarah was already running through neurological tests. Bridget, can you feel this? She touched my legs in several places. Each time I had to shake my head, no. Can you move your toes for me? I concentrated with every fiber of my being, willing my toes to respond. Nothing. Sarah's expression grew increasingly grave. How exactly did you fall? Did you trip? I caught Tyler's eye over Sarah's shoulder. He stood with Lauren, his hand gripping her upper arm tight enough to leave marks. The message was clear. Keep quiet or she pays. But something in Sarah's demeanor gave me courage. I was pushed, I said clearly. My brother pushed me. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Harold exploded. How dare you, Tyler would never. This is exactly what I mean about her attention-seeking. Sarah held up a hand for silence, then spoke quietly to me. Bridget, are you saying this wasn't an accident? No, I breathed. It wasn't, and it's not the first time. Something shifted in Sarah's posture. She glanced at Rodriguez and made a subtle hand gesture I didn't recognize at the time. Later I'd learn it was their code for requesting police backup without alarming potentially dangerous individuals. Okay, Sarah said calmly. Let's focus on getting you stable first. She turned to Rodriguez. I need you to call for police assistance. Tell them we need a unit for crowd control at a medical scene. Crowd control. Harold's voice rose. This is a private residence. With over 50 intoxicated individuals surrounding my patient, Sarah countered. Standard protocol, Mr. Donovan. As Rodriguez made the call, Sarah continued her examination. She asked me routine questions, my age, medical history, current medications, but I could see her really listening, filing away every detail. When I mentioned previous hospital visits for accidents, her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Has anyone moved her since the fall? Sarah asked the crowd. No, someone answered. She's been lying there for about 20 minutes. 20 minutes? Sarah's voice sharpened. And no one thought to call immediately. We thought she was faking, Diane said defensively. She's always been theatrical. Sarah's professional mask slipped for just a moment, revealing disgust before she smoothed it away. Rodriguez, upgrade that call. Tell them we need priority response. As they prepared to transfer me to the backboard, Sarah leaned close. Bridget, I need you to be completely honest with me. Are you in danger from anyone here? I glanced at Tyler again. He'd moved closer, Lauren nowhere to be seen. His eyes promised retribution if I said another word. Yes, I whispered. But please. My sister-in-law, Lauren. She's married to him. They're kids. Sarah squeezed my hand briefly. One thing at a time. Let's get you safe first. The sound of approaching sirens, different from the ambulance, made Tyler stiffen. Harold began barking orders at the party guests, trying to maintain control of the narrative. But Sarah had taken charge of the scene with a quiet authority that my father's bluster couldn't penetrate. As they carefully transferred me onto the backboard, I heard the crunch of gravel announcing new arrivals. 2 police officers emerged from their cruiser, and I watched Tyler's face drain of color as he recognized the lead officer. Detective James Morrison stood 6'3" with graying temples and the weathered look of someone who'd seen too much but hadn't let it break him. His eyes swept the scene, taking in the broken railing, the gathered crowd, my immobilized form, and finally settling on Tyler. Mr. Donovan, Detective Morrison said slowly. We meet again. This is harassment, Harold blustered, inserting himself between the detective and Tyler. My son has nothing to do with this accident. Accident! Morrison's eyebrow rose. Who said anything about an accident? I'm just here for crowd control. His tone was neutral, but his eyes never left Tyler's face. Sarah briefed the detective in rapid medical terminology, but her message was clear: potential spinal injury mechanism of injury inconsistent with accidental fall patient disclosure of assault concerns for domestic violence involving others at scene. I see, Morrison said when she finished. Well, it seems we'll need to secure this scene properly. Officer Daniels, please begin documenting the area, particularly that damaged railing. I'll need statements from witnesses. This is a private party, Harold roared. You have no right. Mr. Donovan. Morrison replied calmly, Your daughter has reported an assault. That makes this a crime scene. Now you can cooperate or I can arrest you for obstruction. Your choice. I'd never seen my father speechless before. His mouth opened and closed like a landed fish, his face cycling through shades of red and purple. Sarah and Rodriguez finished securing me for transport. As they wheeled me toward the ambulance, I caught a glimpse of Marcus, slipping back into the house. Whatever he was planning, it couldn't be good. "Bridget," Sarah said as they loaded me into the ambulance, "I'm going to ride with you to the hospital. Detective Morrison will meet us there to take your statement. But right now, my only concern is your medical care. You're safe now." Safe. The word felt foreign after a lifetime of looking over my shoulder. But as the ambulance doors closed, shutting out my family's toxic presence, I began to believe it might be possible. The last thing I saw before the doors sealed was Tyler being escorted to Morrison's patrol car. Not under arrest, not yet, but no longer in control. And for the first time since childhood, I felt something I'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. The antiseptic smell of Hartford General Hospital should have been comforting after the chaos at Tyler's party, but anxiety crawled under my skin like fire ants. They'd rushed me straight to imaging where I lay trapped in the MRI machine's narrow tunnel, its mechanical heartbeat thundering around me while my own heart raced with fear of what they'd find. Dr. Amanda Foster entered my room 2 hours later, her expression carefully neutral as she carried a tablet loaded with my results. In her early 40s, with silver streaking her auburn hair, she had the bearing of someone who delivered difficult news with compassion, but without sugarcoating. "Bridget, I'm Dr. Foster, your attending physician. How's your pain level? Physical or emotional?" I tried to joke, but it fell flat. She pulled a chair close to my bed. "Let's start with the physical. The MRI results show a complete spinal cord injury at the L2, L3 vertebrae. The cord has been severed." The words hit me like another fall from that deck. Severed, but that means the paralysis in your legs is permanent, Dr. Foster confirmed gently. "I'm so sorry." The room tilted and I gripped the bed rails until my knuckles went white. Permanent. Tyler hadn't just pushed me. He'd stolen my ability to walk, to run, to dance at my own wedding someday. "There's something else." Dr. Foster continued, her tone shifting. "When we pulled your medical history, we found some concerning patterns. Would you be comfortable discussing your previous injuries?" Before I could respond, the door burst open and my roommate Emma rushed in, her usually perfect makeup smeared with tears. "Bridget, I came as soon as I heard. Oh my God, what did he do to you?" "Emma, this is Dr. Foster," I managed. She was just explaining my injuries. Emma's expression darkened. Injuries Tyler caused. She whirled to face the doctor. "You need to know something. Bridget's been documenting everything for years." She pulled a USB drive from her purse. "Photos, recordings, medical bills she paid in cash so her parents wouldn't know. It's all here." Dr. Foster accepted the drive with raised eyebrows. "Bridget, is this true?" I nodded, exhaustion weighing me down. "I started keeping records when I was 16. I knew someday I'd need proof." "Smart girl," Dr. Foster murmured. She inserted the USB into her tablet and her expression grew increasingly grim as she scrolled. "These photos... Bridget, these show systematic abuse over more than a decade." 22 years, I corrected quietly. "Tyler's been hurting me since I was 6. Our parents always had explanations. I was clumsy, accident-prone, making things up for attention." Emma sat on my bed's edge, taking my hand. "Show her the recordings from Christmas." My stomach churned at the memory. Tyler got drunk at Christmas dinner. He started bragging about how he'd finally figured out a permanent solution to the Bridget problem. I thought he was just talking, but he meant it. Dr. Foster finished. "Bridget, with your permission, I need to share this with the police. This evidence combined with your current injuries." "Wait," Emma interrupted. "There's something else you should know. About an hour ago, hospital security caught someone trying to access Bridget's room. They claimed to be family, but when security checked, they found they'd given a fake name." "What did they look like?" I asked, though I suspected I knew. "Tall, dark hair, expensive suit. Security has them on camera. Marcus. Of course Tyler would send his cleanup man. Dr. Foster stood abruptly. I'm ordering increased security for your room. No one gets in without proper clearance. She paused at the door. Bridget, I also need to tell you something. I've been reviewing your historical medical records. Not just recent ones, but going back to childhood. There are x-rays from when you were 7, 12, 14, 16. The radiologist who reviewed them found evidence of multiple old fractures that were never properly documented. Those were from my accidents. I said automatically, the lie worn smooth from repetition. No, Dr. Foster said firmly. These injury patterns aren't consistent with the accidents described in your charts. They're consistent with physical abuse. She pulled up images on her tablet. This broken wrist when you were 12. The angle suggests forced hyperextension, not a bike fall. These rib fractures at 14. They're on both sides of your body. That doesn't happen from falling downstairs. Emma squeezed my hand tighter. Tell her about the cabin. I closed my eyes, transported back to that weekend at our family's lake cabin when I was 14. Tyler had been furious that I'd beaten him in a sailing race in front of his friends. That night, he'd cornered me in the boathouse. He kicked me, I whispered. Over and over while I was curled on the ground, said he was teaching me not to show him up. When Mom found me the next morning, she said I must have fallen down the stairs in the dark. Your mother found you, Dr. Foster's voice sharpened, and took you to the ER with bilateral rib fractures, and the staff just accepted that explanation. My parents are very convincing, I said bitterly, and very generous to the hospital foundation. A knock interrupted us. Detective Morrison entered, followed by a younger female officer. Ms. Donovan, I hope I'm not intruding. I'm here to take your statement whenever you're ready. Actually, Detective, your timing is perfect, Dr. Foster said. I was just documenting evidence of long-term abuse. I believe you'll want to see this. As Dr. Foster showed Morrison the compilation of injuries spanning 2 decades, I watched his expression darken. The female officer, Detective Lisa Park, she introduced herself, took notes rapidly. Ms. Donovan. Detective Morrison said finally, I need you to know something. 6 years ago, I arrested your brother for aggravated assault. The victim was a college classmate who'd embarrassed him at a party. Your brother broke 3 of his ribs and fractured his orbital bone. Your parents paid the victim a substantial sum and the charges were dropped. I never knew, I breathed. Because they made sure you wouldn't, he replied. But I never forgot. When I saw Tyler today, I recognized him immediately, and when I heard you'd been pushed from that deck, he shook his head. Let's just say I'm taking this investigation very personally. Emma pulled out her phone. I've been recording Tyler's threats against Bridget for months. She asked me to just in case. She played a voicemail from 3 weeks ago. Tyler's slurred voice promising that, after grandmother's will is read, everything will change. Bridget won't be a problem much longer. Detective Park looked up from her notes. This establishes premeditation. Ms. Donovan, we have enough to arrest your brother for attempted murder. A commotion in the hallway cut through our conversation. Raised voices, hospital security arguing with someone. Then the door flew open despite the supposed restrictions. A man in his 60s wearing a $1,000 suit strode in like he owned the place, which I realized with sinking clarity he partially did. Richard Morse, the hospital's chief administrator, and more importantly, Tyler's father-in-law. This is a restricted room, Dr. Foster said coldly. Nothing in this hospital is restricted to me, Morse replied smoothly. I'm here to inform you that Ms. Donovan is being transferred to a private facility better equipped to handle her unique situation. Like hell she is, Emma exploded. Detective Morrison stepped forward. Mr. Morse, Ms. Donovan is a victim of attempted murder. She's not going anywhere without police protection. Morse's smile was all teeth. I think you'll find the family has power of attorney in medical situations. Mr. and Mrs. Donovan have already signed the transfer papers. Actually, I said, my voice stronger than I felt, They don't have power of attorney. I revoked it 3 years ago after the incident at Thanksgiving. I looked at Emma. You notarized the documents, remember? Emma grinned. I certainly did, and I have copies in my safe. Morse's composure cracked slightly. That's not possible. I would have been informed. You were informed what my parents wanted you to believe, I said, just like everyone else in their circle. But their control is slipping, Mr. Morse. And if you try to interfere with my medical care or this investigation, you'll be charged with obstruction of justice. Detective Morrison smiled grimly. I'd listen to her, Morse. Your son-in-law is looking at 25 to life for attempted murder. You really want to join him? Morse retreated without another word, but his expression promised this wasn't over. After he left, Dr. Foster manually locked the door. Well, she said, turning back to me, it seems we'll need to be extra vigilant about your security. But don't worry. I've dealt with powerful families trying to silence victims before. They don't intimidate me. Thank you, I whispered, overwhelmed by the support of these strangers who showed more care than my own family ever had. Don't thank me yet, Dr. Foster replied. We have a long road ahead, but first let's talk about your treatment options. The spinal injury is severe, but there are new therapies, experimental treatments. As she spoke about possibilities and hope, I realized something profound had shifted. For 28 years, I'd been trapped in a cage built of family secrets and forced silence. Tyler had shattered my spine, but inadvertently opened the door to my freedom. The truth was finally coming out, and nothing, not my parents' money, not Morse's connections, not Tyler's violence, could stop it now. The next morning brought a parade of professionals through my hospital room, but none more unexpected than Janet Williams, the hospital's senior social worker. A woman in her 50s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, she carried herself with the quiet authority of someone who'd spent decades advocating for vulnerable patients. Bridget, I'm here as part of standard protocol for injury cases. She began settling into the visitor's chair. But I'll be honest, some irregularities in your case file caught my attention. What kind of irregularities? I asked, though my stomach was already knotting with dread. Well, for starters, there are currently 4 separate life insurance policies in your name, all purchased within the last 8 months. The beneficiaries are interesting. My blood turned to ice water. I didn't purchase any life insurance policies. Janet's expression grew grave. I suspected as much. The policies total $12 million, and they all list your parents and brother as beneficiaries. The signatures match yours, but I never signed anything. I finished. Oh God, Tyler's gambling debts. Emma mentioned he owes money to some dangerous people. Gambling debts. Janet made a note. How much are we talking about? Emma, who'd spent the night in the uncomfortable hospital chair, spoke up. Last I heard, close to $3 million. He's been borrowing from increasingly sketchy sources, some connected to organized crime. A knock interrupted us. Detective Morrison entered with his partner and another man I didn't recognize, younger, sharp-suited, with the bearing of federal law enforcement. Ms. Donovan, this is Special Agent David Kim from the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, Morrison said. The insurance policies Ms. Williams discovered triggered some red flags in their system. Agent Kim stepped forward. We've been monitoring certain insurance fraud networks in Connecticut. Your brother's name came up in connection with some questionable policy applications. May I? He gestured to Janet's documentation. As he reviewed the papers, his expression grew increasingly serious. These policies were purchased using sophisticated identity theft. But what's more concerning is the timing. All 4 policies have contestability periods that end next month. After that, they pay out regardless of circumstances. You mean, I couldn't finish the thought. I mean, your brother had roughly 6 weeks to ensure you had a fatal accident before questions could be asked. Agent Kim confirmed. The push from the deck may have been impulsive, but the plan to kill you was definitely premeditated. Emma pulled out her laptop. I've been tracking some weird stuff too. Bridget, remember when your apartment building's security system mysteriously went offline 3 weeks ago? The management company said it was routine maintenance, I replied slowly. Yeah, well, I did some digging. Emma turned her screen toward the investigators. The maintenance was performed by a company that doesn't exist, but the van they used, it's registered to Marcus Chen, Tyler's friend. Detective Morrison leaned forward. The same Marcus Chen who deleted security footage at the party. The very same, Emma confirmed. And here's where it gets really interesting. I pulled Bridget's keycard access logs from her building. Someone used a cloned card to enter her apartment 6 times in the past month, always when she was at work. My skin crawled. Tyler was in my apartment, why? Agent Kim and Detective Morrison exchanged glances. Ms. Donovan, what's your daily routine? Coffee shops, gym, regular appointments? I go to the same yoga studio every morning at 6. Stop at Grounded Coffee on State Street after. Work until 6 or 7, then usually home unless I have events for the jewelry business. Predictable routine, Morrison muttered. Easy to plan an accident. Janet spoke up. There's more. I found medical power of attorney documents filed with the hospital last week. Before your fall. They grant your parents complete control over your medical decisions if you're incapacitated. But I revoked their power of attorney years ago, I protested. These are new documents with fresh signatures. Forgeries, obviously, but sophisticated ones. Someone was preparing for you to be unable to advocate for yourself. The pieces clicked together with horrifying clarity. The insurance policies, the surveillance, the forged documents, Tyler's drunken threats about a permanent solution. This wasn't just about anger or inheritance. It was a calculated murder plot. Emma's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and paled. Bridget, you need to see this. She showed me a text from Lauren, Tyler's wife. They're destroying evidence. Tyler and Harold burning papers in the fireplace. Marcus here with industrial shredder. Please help us get out. Detective Morrison was already on his phone. I need units at the Donovan residence immediately. Probable cause for search warrant based on evidence destruction. Agent Kim added, we'll need forensic accountants too. If they're destroying financial documents. Wait, I interrupted. The jewelry business. Tyler doesn't know I changed all the passwords and security protocols last month after grandmother died. If he's been planning this, he might have tried to access the accounts. Janet pulled out her phone. I have a contact in corporate banking security. Let me make a call. As the room erupted in coordinated activity, I felt a strange mix of vindication and horror. Every paranoid precaution I'd taken over the years, the documentation, the recordings, the security measures, had been justified, but the scope of the betrayal was staggering. Ms. Donovan, Agent Kim said gently, I know this is overwhelming, but your preparation may have saved your life, and it's definitely going to put your brother away for a very long time. What about my parents? I asked quietly. They're destroying evidence. They knew about the insurance policies. They were ready with forged medical documents. Conspiracy to commit murder carries the same penalty as attempted murder in Connecticut, Morrison replied. If we can prove they knew about and aided Tyler's plan. Emma squeezed my hand. They'll finally face consequences. Janet returned from her phone call looking stunned. The corporate security team found multiple attempted breaches of the jewelry business account starting 4 months ago, all traceable to IP addresses associated with your family's properties. They were trying to drain the accounts. But they couldn't, I said with grim satisfaction. Grandmother made sure of that. Multi-factor authentication, biometric requirements, and third-party oversight. She knew they'd try something after she died. Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman, Agent Kim observed. She was. I agreed, tears pricking my eyes. She saw through them all. That's why she left everything to me. Not out of favoritism, but for protection. Another knock at the door interrupted my reflection. A young officer entered breathless with urgency. Detectives, we have a situation. Security spotted a suspicious individual in the parking garage. Matches the description of someone who was asking about Ms. Donovan's room earlier. Morrison's hand moved to his weapon. Description? Late 30s athletic build wearing maintenance coveralls but no hospital ID. Security approached and he fled on foot. They're reviewing cameras now. That's not Marcus, I said slowly. He's shorter, stockier. Emma's face went white. Oh God, Bridget remembered Tyler's voicemail about having a professional solution if the family way didn't work. Agent Kim was already typing rapidly on his phone. I'm alerting hospital security and local law enforcement. Ms. Donovan, we're moving you to a secure wing immediately. As medical staff prepared for my transfer, the reality of my situation crystallized. This wasn't just about family dysfunction or inheritance disputes anymore. Tyler's desperation had led him to hire someone to finish what he'd started. Detective Morrison, I said as they wheeled my bed toward the door. When you arrested Tyler 6 years ago, did he threaten you? Morrison's jaw tightened. He said his family would bury me, that I'd regret crossing the Donovans. But you didn't back down. No, ma'am, and I won't this time either. He looked me straight in the eye. Your brother thought he could push you off that deck and walk away clean. Instead, he's opened the door to exposing every crime your family has committed. Insurance fraud, attempted murder, conspiracy, identity theft, forgery. The list keeps growing. As they moved me through the hospital's secured corridors surrounded by armed security and federal agents, I thought about the twisted irony. Tyler had tried to eliminate me as a problem. Instead, he'd transformed me into his worst nightmare, a victim with evidence protection and nothing left to lose. The hunter had become the hunted, and I was done being prey. The secure wing of Hartford General felt like a different world, quieter with restricted access and guards posted at every entrance. I'd been there 3 days when my estranged Aunt Patricia appeared at my door, her presence as unexpected as snow in July. Patricia Donovan Mitchell had cut ties with our family 15 years ago, moving to Oregon without explanation. Now in her late 50s, she looked older, worn down by secrets I was about to discover. Bridget, she said softly, entering my room with tentative steps. I came as soon as I heard. I should have come sooner, should have warned you. Aunt Patricia. I struggled to sit up straighter. I don't understand. Why are you here? She pulled the visitor's chair close, her hands trembling as she opened a leather portfolio. Because it's time you knew the truth about why your grandmother left everything to you, and why Tyler can never ever be allowed to control the family assets. What are you talking about? Patricia extracted a faded newspaper clipping from 1999. The headline read, "Local Boy 8 Drowns at Country Club Pool." My blood chilled as I recognized the photo. My cousin Danny, Patricia's nephew from her late husband's side. Danny didn't just drown, Patricia said, her voice hollow. Tyler killed him. The room spun. That's impossible. Tyler was only 11. Old enough to hold a smaller child underwater, Patricia continued grimly. Danny had won the junior swim championship that day, beat Tyler in front of everyone. Your brother couldn't stand it. My hands shook as I studied the article. But the paper says it was an accident, that Danny hit his head, because your parents paid off 3 witnesses and the medical examiner. Patricia pulled out more documents, bank statements, sworn affidavits kept hidden for decades. Harold withdrew $200,000 in cash the day after Danny died. The witnesses, teenage lifeguards, suddenly had college funds. The medical examiner retired early to Florida. Detective Morrison, who'd been standing guard outside, entered quietly. Ma'am, I couldn't help but overhear. These documents are yours, Patricia said, handing him the portfolio. I've kept copies in a safety deposit box for 25 years, waiting for the right moment. When I heard what Tyler did to Bridget, I knew it was time. Why didn't you come forward before? I asked, anger mixing with shock. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. Because Rose, your grandmother, begged me not to. She knew the truth but believed she could control Tyler, keep him from hurting anyone else. She promised to protect you and any other potential victims. In exchange for my silence, she set up trust funds for Danny's siblings and funded my move to Oregon. Grandmother knew my world tilted further off axis. She saw everything from her bedroom window. The pool house, Tyler holding Danny under the staff, too far away to intervene. By the time she got downstairs, it was too late. Patricia wiped her eyes. Rose spent the rest of her life trying to contain the monster she'd helped create through silence. Morrison was photographing each document with methodical precision. Ms. Mitchell, are any of those witnesses still alive? 2 of the 3 lifeguards. I've stayed in touch. They're willing to testify now that the statute of limitations has passed on perjury. Patricia looked at me intently. Your grandmother changed her will 6 months before she died. She'd discovered something that convinced her Tyler had to be cut off completely. What did she discover? Patricia pulled out the final document, a private investigator's report dated 2 years ago. Tyler had been researching untraceable poisons, attending estate planning seminars about inheritance law. Your grandmother hired someone to follow him after she noticed her tea tasting strange. The investigator found evidence Tyler was slowly poisoning her. I gasped, but grandmother died of heart failure. Induced by chronic digitalis poisoning, Patricia confirmed. Nearly impossible to prove without exhumation, but the investigator documented Tyler purchasing foxglove plants and researching extraction methods. Emma, who'd been silent throughout the revelation, finally spoke. He killed his own grandmother. Rose knew she was dying, Patricia said. That's why she moved so quickly to change the will. She couldn't prove the poisoning, but she could protect the family fortune from falling into a murderer's hands. Everything went to you, Bridget, because you were the only one she trusted to do the right thing. A knock interrupted our devastating conversation. Agent Kim entered with Janet Williams and a woman I didn't recognize, mid-40s professional suit with the bearing of someone accustomed to courtroom battles. Ms. Donovan, I'm Assistant District Attorney Michelle Crawford. I've been assigned to prosecute your case. Ms. Mitchell's information has just transformed this from attempted murder to a potential serial killer investigation. Serial killer. The words felt foreign applied to my brother. Danny Watson's death, your grandmother's suspicious passing the attempt on your life. That's a pattern spanning 24 years, ADA Crawford explained. We'll need to exhume your grandmother's body, re-examine Danny's case. There might be others, I said quietly, remembering. Tyler had a college roommate who died in a car accident. The brakes failed on a clear day, and a business rival of Dad's who had a fatal allergic reaction at a dinner party Tyler attended. Morrison and Kim exchanged sharp glances. We'll need names, dates, any details you can remember. As I provided what information I could, Patricia revealed more family secrets. Harold's embezzlement from the jewelry company, nearly $8 million over 15 years to fund Tyler's lifestyle and pay off his victims. Diane's knowledge of everything her choice to enable rather than protect. Shell companies offshore accounts a web of financial crimes that would have made Grandmother Rose sick. She documented everything, Patricia said, producing a final envelope. Rose spent her last years gathering evidence. Bank records, recorded conversations, photographs. She knew eventually someone would need proof to bring them down. It's all in a safety deposit box. Here's the key and authorization for Bridget to access it. Why didn't she just go to the police? I asked, overwhelmed. Because she still hoped Tyler might change, or at least that containing him would be enough. But mainly, Patricia sighed heavily. She was protecting the family reputation. Old money, old habits. She chose preservation over justice until it was too late. But she chose justice in the end, Morrison observed. By leaving everything to Bridget, she ensured the truth would eventually surface. Ada Crawford stood, Ms. Donovan, with your permission, we'd like to expand this investigation significantly. Your brother will be charged with attempted murder, but we're now looking at multiple homicides, conspiracy, fraud, and racketeering. Your parents will face serious charges as accomplices. Do it, I said without hesitation. All of it. Expose everything. After the authorities left to pursue their expanding investigation, Patricia remained. We sat in silence for a moment, absorbing the weight of generational sins finally brought to light. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for staying quiet, for letting you grow up in that house of horrors. Rose and I thought we were protecting you by managing Tyler, but we just enabled him to escalate." "You're here now," I said, reaching for her hand. "That matters." "There's one more thing." Patricia pulled out a letter in Grandmother's handwriting. "She left this for you, only to be opened if something happened to you at Tyler's hands." With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope. "My dearest Bridget, if you're reading this, then my greatest fear has come true, and I failed to protect you. Please forgive a cowardly old woman who chose family reputation over innocent lives. Tyler is what happens when evil goes unchecked, when money silences justice, when parents refuse to see the monster they created. I carry the weight of every person he's hurt because I helped hide his crimes. Use everything I've left you, not just the money, but the evidence, the connections, the power, to end this. Where I was weak, be strong. Where I was silent, speak truth. You were always the best of us, the only pure soul in a poison tree. That's why it all goes to you, not as a burden, but as a weapon. Fight back, my darling girl. Win. All my love, Grandmother Rose." Tears streaming down my face, I folded the letter carefully. Patricia squeezed my hand as we processed the magnitude of what had been revealed. Tyler hadn't just pushed me off a deck. He'd pushed too hard against a fortress of evidence my grandmother had spent years building. Every crime, every payoff, every death, all documented and waiting for someone brave enough to use it. "She saved me," I whispered. "Even from beyond the grave, she saved me." "No," Patricia corrected gently. "She gave you the tools. You're saving yourself. And in doing so, you'll get justice for Danny, for Rose, for all of Tyler's victims." As the sun set over Hartford, painting my hospital room in shades of gold and crimson, I felt the weight of my inheritance fully. Not just the money or the business, but the responsibility to end a cycle of violence that had claimed too many lives. Tyler thought he'd silence me forever when he pushed me off that deck. Instead, he'd awakened an army of ghosts, and they were all testifying for the prosecution. Attorney Melissa Crawford commanded attention the moment she entered my hospital room 5 days later. Tall and impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, she carried herself with the confidence of someone who'd spent 20 years dismantling corrupt dynasties in court. Her reputation preceded her. The lawyer who'd taken down the Pemberton pharmaceutical empire and exposed the Whitfield family's human trafficking ring. "Ms. Donovan." She said, her handshake firm despite my prone position. "I've reviewed your case. Your brother made a critical error pushing you off that deck. He gave us the opening we needed to expose decades of criminal enterprise." "You'll take the case?" I asked hopefully. "I already have," she replied, opening her briefcase with practiced efficiency. "Filed the civil suit this morning. Attempted murder, assault, intentional infliction of emotional distress, conspiracy fraud. That's just the beginning. Your parents are named as co-defendants given their participation in the cover-up and conspiracy." Emma whistled low. "How much are we seeking?" "Everything," Melissa said simply. "Every asset they've hidden, every dollar they've stolen, every property they own. But more importantly, we're seeking justice. Criminal prosecution runs parallel to our civil case. Your brother won't just lose money, he'll lose freedom." A soft knock interrupted us. Lauren stood in the doorway, Tyler's wife, looking like she'd aged a decade in the past week. Behind her, their children, Mason and Sophia, clutched their mother's hands, eyes wide with uncertainty. "I'm sorry to interrupt," Lauren said quietly. Bridget, could we talk? Please. Melissa started to object, but I held up my hand. It's okay. Lauren's a victim too. Lauren's composure crumbled as she approached my bed. I need to help. Tyler, what he did to you. He's been doing to us too. I can't let my children grow up thinking this is normal. Mrs. Donovan. Melissa said carefully, are you saying you want to testify against your husband? I'm saying I have recordings, Lauren replied, pulling out a small digital recorder. 3 years worth. Tyler talking about his plans, his past crimes, what he intended to do to Bridget. My breath caught. You've been recording him for 3 years. Since the first time he hit Mason, Lauren's voice broke. My baby was only 5. Tyler backhanded him for spilling juice. That night, I started documenting everything. Melissa immediately took charge. Mrs. Donovan, Lauren, we need to get you and the children into protective custody immediately. If Tyler discovers you're cooperating, he already knows something's wrong. I took the kids and left 3 nights ago. We're staying at a women's shelter under assumed names. Lauren looked at her children, then back at me. Play the recording from last month, the one labeled birthday planning. Lauren pressed play. Tyler's voice filled the room, chillingly casual. Once Bridget has her accident, everything falls into place. Insurance pays out company transfers to family control, and that shelter Lauren keeps threatening to run to they'll lose their biggest donor when I redirect the foundation funds. 2 birds, 1 push. The recording continued. Tyler detailing his plans with sociopathic precision. Where to strike, when to act, how to ensure maximum damage while maintaining plausibility. My blood ran cold hearing him discuss my death like a business transaction. There are dozens more, Lauren said quietly, including one where he admits to killing your cousin Danny. He was drunk bragging about being undefeated in eliminating problems. Melissa's eyes gleamed with prosecutorial fire. Lauren, this evidence is invaluable, but testifying will put you at risk. Are you prepared for that? My children deserve better, Lauren said firmly. I failed to protect them from their father, but I won't fail to protect them from becoming him. Young Mason stepped forward, pulling something from his pocket. Aunt Bridget, Daddy told me to give you this at the party, but I didn't want to. It made my tummy feel bad. He handed me a small envelope. Inside was a sympathy card, the kind you'd send for a death in the family. Blank inside, but the implication was clear. Tyler had been so confident in his plan that he'd prepared condolence cards in advance. You did the right thing, sweetheart, I told Mason, fighting tears. Melissa photographed the card, adding it to our growing evidence pile. This shows premeditation to an extraordinary degree. Lauren, we need to get you formally into witness protection. I'll make the calls. As Melissa coordinated protection for Lauren and the children, Detective Morrison arrived with urgent news. We've arrested Marcus Chen, he announced. Caught him attempting to flee to Canada. He's already flipping on Tyler to save himself. Turns out your brother promised him $2 million to help orchestrate your death and destroy evidence. $2 million he didn't have, I noted, which Marcus discovered when he tried to collect after deleting the security footage. Morrison confirmed. He's providing full cooperation, including text messages, recorded conversations, and details about Tyler's previous crimes he helped cover up. The door opened again, revealing someone I never expected to see in my hospital room, Judge Elizabeth Thornton, the senior family court judge who'd overseen numerous Donovan family matters over the years. Now in her 70s, she carried herself with quiet dignity, despite obvious distress. Bridget, she said softly, may I come in? Melissa tensed. Your Honor, I'm not sure this is appropriate given potential judicial involvement. I'm here to provide evidence, Counselor, Judge Thornton interrupted. Not to interfere. I've spent 30 years watching the Donovan family manipulate the legal system. No more. She produced a thick folder. Every time your parents appeared in my court, custody evaluations, restraining order requests that mysteriously disappeared sealed juvenile records, I documented my concerns. Legal precedent prevented me from acting on suspicion alone, but I kept everything. You knew, I asked, stunned. I suspected. The patterns were clear. Injuries explained away witnesses who suddenly recanted charges, dropped without explanation. But your family's lawyers were experts at staying just within legal bounds. She handed the folder to Melissa. This includes correspondence from other judges expressing similar concerns. We've been watching, waiting for someone brave enough to stand up to them. Melissa reviewed the documents with increasing excitement. Your Honor, this establishes a clear pattern of obstruction of justice spanning decades. This is exactly what we need to show systematic criminal enterprise. There's one more thing, Judge Thornton said, looking directly at me. Your grandmother came to me 6 months before she died. She wanted to file charges against Tyler for attempted poisoning, but didn't have enough proof. I advised her to change her will immediately and document everything. I'm prepared to testify about that conversation. The room fell silent as we absorbed the magnitude of allies emerging from shadows. Lauren with her recordings, Marcus turning state's evidence, Judge Thornton breaking judicial silence, Patricia providing historical proof. Tyler's fortress of fear was crumbling as victims found courage in numbers. We're filing additional charges tomorrow, Melissa announced. With this evidence, we're looking at federal racketeering charges under RICO statutes. This isn't just assault anymore, it's organized crime. Lauren's phone buzzed. She paled reading the message. It's from Harold. He says if I don't return the children immediately, he'll have me arrested for kidnapping. Let him try, Melissa said fiercely. I've already filed emergency custody papers granting you sole custody with supervised visitation only pending the criminal investigation. Your father-in-law has no legal standing, and any attempt to intimidate you will be added to the obstruction charges. Detective Morrison's radio crackled. He listened intently, then smiled grimly. Speaking of your father-in-law, units just arrested him at his office. He was attempting to wire transfer $8 million to an offshore account. Agent Kim's team caught him red-handed. The tide was turning with tsunami force. Each move Tyler and my parents made to cover their tracks only provided more evidence of guilt. Their hubris, the absolute certainty that money and influence would protect them, as it always had, was becoming their downfall. Bridget, Melissa said, sitting beside my bed, I need you to understand what comes next. This trial will be brutal. Your family will use every resource, every connection, every dirty trick to destroy you. They'll claim you're lying, mentally unstable, motivated by greed. Are you prepared for that? I thought of Danny, 8 years old and drowning while Tyler held him under. Of grandmother Rose, slowly poisoned by the grandson she'd tried to contain. Of all the unnamed victims silenced by Donovan money over the years. They've already destroyed my body, I said firmly. They don't get to destroy the truth, too. Whatever it takes, however hard it gets, we finish this. Melissa smiled, the expression transforming her stern features. Then let's make legal history. The Donovan crime family ends with you. As strategies were planned and protection arranged, I felt the power shifting. For 28 years, I'd been the victim. Now surrounded by allies and armed with truth, I was becoming something far more dangerous to Tyler and my parents. I was becoming justice incarnate, and they had nowhere left to hide. The story broke on a Tuesday morning like thunder across clear skies. Catherine Price, the investigative journalist whose expose on corporate corruption had won her a Pulitzer, stood outside Hartford General Hospital, delivering a live report that would change everything. Behind me lies Bridget Donovan, paralyzed from the waist down after her brother allegedly pushed her from a second-story deck. Catherine began, her voice carrying the gravity of the moment. But what started as a family dispute has exploded into one of Connecticut's largest criminal investigations, exposing decades of murder, fraud, and cover-ups among the state's elite. I watched from my hospital bed as the story dominated every local channel. Emma had connected Catherine with our legal team after the journalist received anonymous tips about the case. Tips we later learned came from hospital staff horrified by my family's behavior. This is good, Melissa said, monitoring social media on her tablet. Public pressure prevents them from burying this in legal procedures. The interview Catherine conducted with me aired that evening. Against Melissa's initial reservations, I'd insisted on appearing on camera from my hospital bed, wanting the world to see what Tyler had done. "He's been hurting me since I was 6. I told Catherine, my voice steady despite the pain. My parents knew. They covered for him when he killed our 8-year-old cousin. They helped him hide evidence when he poisoned our grandmother. I was supposed to be next." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, justice for Bridget trended nationally. The jewelry company's social media flooded with messages of support. Orders poured in from customers wanting to support the business Tyler had tried to steal. But more importantly, other victims began coming forward. The first was Jennifer Walsh, a former employee of my father's, who'd been assaulted by Tyler at a company Christmas party 10 years ago. She'd been paid $50,000 to sign an NDA, but legal experts confirmed NDAs couldn't silence criminal testimony. "I was 22, Jennifer told reporters outside the courthouse. "Tyler cornered me in the parking garage. When I reported it to HR, Harold Donovan himself offered me money to leave quietly. I took it because I was scared and needed the job. But seeing Bridget's courage, I can't stay silent anymore." Then came Robert Henley, whose brother had been Tyler's business partner until a suspicious boating accident 5 years ago. Tyler was the last person to see him alive. The Coast Guard ruled it accidental drowning, but my brother was an expert swimmer. And coincidentally, his death allowed Tyler to take full control of their joint ventures. Dr. Patricia Winters, our former family physician, broke her silence about years of treating suspicious injuries. The Donovans always had explanations, always paid in cash, always requested no documentation. I violated my ethical duties by complying. I'm ready to testify about what I really saw. Each revelation sparked new investigations. The FBI's Financial Crimes Division uncovered a network of shell companies Harold used to launder money. The Connecticut State Police reopened 6 suspicious deaths potentially connected to Tyler. The IRS began forensic audits of 3 decades of family tax returns. "Your family created a criminal empire," Agent Kim explained during one of his visits. "But empires fall when people stop being afraid." The media attention affected more than just the investigation. Lauren, in protective custody with the children, gave a single powerful interview about domestic violence in wealthy families. "People assume abuse only happens in certain neighborhoods, certain tax brackets," she said, holding her children close. "But monsters wear designer suits too. They just hide it better. My husband tried to murder his sister while our children were playing nearby. If Bridget hadn't survived to speak truth, my babies might have been next." The business community reacted swiftly. Harold was removed from all corporate boards. Country clubs revoked memberships. Charities returned Donovan donations, not wanting tainted money. The family name, once synonymous with prestige, became radioactive. Tyler, still in custody awaiting trial, made the catastrophic decision to give a jailhouse interview, believing he could charm public opinion as he'd always charmed authorities. It backfired spectacularly. "My sister has always been jealous of me." He told the interviewer, his narcissism on full display. "She's exaggerating a simple accident to steal the family fortune. Ask anyone. I'm a devoted father, successful businessman, pillar of the community." "What about Danny Watson?" the interviewer pressed. "Your 8-year-old cousin who drowned." Tyler's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and predatory. Danny was weak. He couldn't handle a little roughhousing. Natural selection, really. The clip went viral within minutes. Natural selection. He'd called murdering a child natural selection on national television. He just confessed. Melissa laughed, actually laughed, watching the footage. His lawyer must be having a heart attack. Indeed, Tyler's high-powered defense attorney withdrew from the case the next day, citing irreconcilable differences in legal strategy. 3 other firms declined to represent him after reviewing the evidence. The Donovan family jewelry business, which I'd worried might suffer from the scandal, experienced the opposite effect. Sales increased 400% as customers rallied to support me. I announced all profits would fund a foundation for domestic violence, survivors, and spinal cord research. "You're turning poison into medicine," Patricia told me during one visit. "Your grandmother would be so proud." Local news anchor James Mitchell, no relation to Patricia, approached me about a documentary. "This isn't just about one family's crimes," he explained. "It's about how wealth and privilege shield predators. Your story could change how society handles these cases." I agreed with conditions. Proceeds would go to victim support services. Lauren and other victims' identities would be protected unless they chose to participate, and the focus would remain on justice, not sensationalism. As weeks passed, the media coverage evolved from shocking headlines to deeper investigations of systemic failures. How had Tyler escaped consequences for so long? Why did authorities consistently accept the family's explanations? How many other prominent families were hiding similar secrets? Catherine Price published a series examining Connecticut's culture of elite protection. She found 17 other cases where wealthy families had suspicious deaths or assaults disappear through strategic donations and legal maneuvering. "The Donovan case isn't unique," she wrote. "It's just the first where a victim survived with evidence and refused to be silenced. My hospital room became command central for a movement larger than our individual case. Prosecutors from other jurisdictions contacted Melissa about cold cases potentially connected to Tyler. Advocacy groups asked me to speak about survivors' rights. Medical professionals reached out about improving injury documentation protocols." "You've started something," Detective Morrison observed during one visit. "Other victims see you fighting back and winning. They're finding their own courage." But the media attention brought challenges too. Herald hired a public relations firm to wage counter-narrative warfare. They planted stories suggesting I was mentally unstable, motivated by greed, possibly brain-damaged from my fall. They dredged up any mistake I'd ever made, any moment of imperfection, to undermine my credibility. "Let them," Melissa advised when I worried about the attacks. "Desperate mudslinging only makes them look worse. We have evidence. They have spin." She was right. Every attempted character assassination backfired when contrasted with mounting evidence. Security footage from various locations showed Tyler stalking me. Financial records revealed the insurance policies. Lauren's recordings provided irrefutable proof of premeditation. The turning point came when Mason Tyler and Lauren's 8-year-old son drew a picture in therapy that made national news. It showed a stick figure pushing another off a building, while a third figure, labeled me, watched. The therapist's notes indicated Mason had witnessed his father practicing how he would push me. "Even his own child knew," one commentator observed. "How many signs were ignored? How many warnings dismissed?" As I lay in my hospital bed watching the empire of lies collapse on every channel, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 28 years: validation. The world finally saw what I'd always known. Tyler was a monster. My parents were enablers, and their money couldn't buy silence anymore. "Ready for tomorrow?" Melissa asked as visiting hours ended. Tomorrow began depositions for the civil trial, the next phase in our legal battle. "I've been ready my whole life," I replied. "I just didn't know it until Tyler pushed me off that deck." The media had lit a fire that couldn't be extinguished. Truth once unleashed proved more powerful than any fortune. And as Catherine Price signed off her nightly report with, "This is just the beginning," I knew she was right. The Donovan family had ruled through fear for generations. But fear dissipates when exposed to light, and we were shining spotlights from every angle. The revolution wasn't just televised, it was trending viral and unstoppable. Physical therapy at Hartford General's specialized spinal unit felt like climbing Mount Everest every single day. My therapist, Marcus Thompson, a former Paralympic athlete who'd lost his own mobility in a motorcycle accident, didn't believe in gentle encouragement. "Pain means you're alive," he said during our first session, guiding my unresponsive legs through range of motion exercises. "And alive means you can fight." The unit housed 12 other spinal injury patients, each battling their own mountains. There was Sarah, 23, paralyzed in a diving accident. James, 45, shot during a robbery. Maria, 31, thrown from a horse. We formed an unlikely family united by wheelchairs and determination. "Your brother did this?" Sarah asked during group therapy, her voice mixing sympathy with rage. "And your parents defended him." "Still are defending him," I confirmed. "Their latest filing claims I threw myself off the deck for attention." "That's insane," James muttered. "Though my ex-wife claimed I shot myself for the insurance money, so I guess criminals always blame victims." Dr. Kenji Yamamoto, the unit's director and pioneering spinal surgeon, reviewed my case with cautious optimism. "The severance is complete at L2-L3, he explained, showing me the scans. "Traditional medicine says paralysis is permanent, but we're working on revolutionary treatments. Gene therapy, stem cell implants, neural bridging technology. Would you be interested in our experimental program?" "What are the risks?" Emma asked, ever protective. "Significant," Dr. Yamamoto admitted, "but the potential rewards include partial or even full mobility restoration. We've had 3 successful cases in preliminary trials." "I'll do it," I said without hesitation. "Tyler took my legs. I want them back." The screening process was exhaustive. Physical evaluations, psychological assessments, legal waivers. But 3 weeks into my hospital stay, I was accepted into the groundbreaking program. Hope felt dangerous after so much loss, but I clung to it anyway. My days developed routine: morning physical therapy, afternoon occupational therapy, evening sessions, learning to navigate the world from a wheelchair. I documented everything on social media, building a following of hundreds of thousands who found inspiration in my refusal to surrender. "You're giving people hope," Maria observed, watching my follower count climb. "Showing them survival is possible." But survival came with setbacks. Tyler, out on $5 million bail, violated the restraining order repeatedly. Security cameras caught him in the hospital parking lot. Staff reported suspicious phone calls asking about my schedule. Once a man claiming to be a physical therapist tried accessing my floor with fake credentials. "He's escalating," Detective Morrison warned after the 3rd incident. "Desperation makes predators more dangerous." Melissa successfully petitioned to revoke Tyler's bail, but he disappeared before authorities could arrest him. A manhunt began while my security increased. FBI agents joined hospital security in protecting the spinal unit. "I won't let him make me a prisoner," I insisted when they suggested moving me to a secure facility. "This unit, these people. They're my path to walking again." Dr. Yamamoto scheduled my experimental treatment to begin in week 6. The process involved harvesting my own stem cells, genetically modifying them to bridge neural gaps, then surgically implanting them at the injury site. Science fiction becoming medical reality. The night before the procedure, my support group threw a party in the common room. Sarah had baked a cake reading "New Spine Who Dis." James played guitar while Maria sang. Even Marcus Thompson smiled, which felt like witnessing a miracle itself. "Whatever happens tomorrow," I told them, "you've already helped me heal in ways doctors can't measure." "Save the sappy speeches for after you walk again," Sarah teased, but her eyes were wet. Private investigator Monica Shaw, whom Tyler had originally hired to dig up dirt on me, arrived with a revelation that changed everything. "I've been investigating your grandmother's death," she announced. "The digitalis poisoning Patricia mentioned I found proof. Your grandmother's hairdresser noticed Tyler adding something to her tea during visits. She has photographs." "Why didn't she say anything before?" I asked, stunned. "Tyler threatened her daughter, but with him on the run and facing life in prison, she's ready to testify. There's more. I've connected Tyler to 3 other suspicious deaths through financial records and witness statements. The implications were staggering. Tyler wasn't just violent, he was a serial killer who used family wealth to hide bodies. Each revelation added years to his potential sentence. "We'll need to inform the FBI," Morrison said. "This crosses state lines, involves multiple jurisdictions. Tyler's looking at federal death penalty charges if convicted. As terrifying as that news was, I had to focus on my surgery. Dr. Yamamoto explained the procedure again, 8 hours of microsurgery inserting modified stem cells along my damaged spinal cord, then electrical stimulation to encourage neural pathway regeneration. Best case scenario? I asked. Full mobility within 18 months. Worst case, no change. Most likely partial restoration. Maybe walking with assistance, improved sensation, better autonomic function. Let's do it. The morning of surgery, unexpected visitors arrived. Lauren brought the children, both carrying handmade cards. Masons showed stick figures holding hands with "Get Better Aunt Bridget" in careful letters. Sophia had drawn butterflies and rainbows with "Love You" scribbled in purple crayon. "We're rooting for you." Lauren said, her own recovery evident in steadier hands and clearer eyes. "The kids pray for you every night." "When you can walk again," Mason said seriously, "will you teach me to swim? Daddy never would, and Mommy's scared of water." "It's a deal," I promised, hugging them tight. Patricia arrived next, carrying grandmother's jewelry box. "She wanted you to have this before any major life event," she said, revealing an antique locket. Inside were photos, grandmother as a young woman and surprisingly me at age 5, before Tyler's violence began. "She loved you most," Patricia whispered. "Even when she couldn't protect you, she loved you most." The surgical team arrived to prep me. As they wheeled me toward the operating room, my spinal unit family lined the hallway. Sarah started clapping, then James, Maria, all of them. Other patients joined from their rooms. Nurses, doctors, even security guards applauded as I passed. "Go get him, Tiger," Marcus Thompson called out, actually grinning. In pre-op, Dr. Yamamoto made final checks. "Any questions?" "Just one," I said. "When I walk again, and I will walk again, can I come back and help others in the program? Pay forward what you're giving me." He smiled. "I'd be honored to have you on the team. Now let's make medical history." As anesthesia took hold, my last conscious thought wasn't about Tyler or trials or family betrayal. It was about possibility, about Sarah learning to paint with her mouth, James rebuilding his life, Maria starting a foundation, all of us proving that breaking someone's body doesn't break their spirit. Tyler had pushed me off that deck to destroy me. Instead, he'd pushed me into a community of survivors who showed me strength I never knew existed. Whatever happened in surgery, whatever came next with trials and testimony, I'd already won something Tyler could never understand. I'd found my people. I'd found my purpose. And maybe, just maybe, I'd find my way back to my feet. The operating room lights blurred as drugs pulled me under. 8 hours to rewrite my future. 8 hours to reclaim what violence stole. 8 hours to prove that healing was the greatest revenge. "Count backward from 10, the anesthesiologist instructed. 10, for all Tyler's victims seeking justice. 9, for grandmother's faith in truth. 8, for Danny who never got to grow up. 7, for Lauren and the kids breaking free. 6, for my spinal unit family. 5, for everyone who refused to stay silent. 4, for the life I'd build from ashes. 3, for the foundation I'd create. 2, for the hope that survives violence. 1, for the girl who refused to stay down. The conference room at Melissa Crawford's law firm buzzed with controlled chaos as our legal team prepared for what media had dubbed the trial of the century. 3 months had passed since my experimental surgery, and while I still couldn't walk, I'd regained partial sensation in my legs, a miracle that strengthened our case about the severity of Tyler's attack. "Depositions start tomorrow," Melissa announced, arranging files with military precision. "Harold first, then Diane. Tyler remains in custody after his capture last month, and his deposition is scheduled for Thursday." Tyler's arrest had been dramatic. FBI agents found him hiding in a Montana survivalist compound, armed and increasingly unstable. He'd been dragged back to Connecticut in shackles, ranting about conspiracy theories and family betrayal. Harold entered the deposition room like he still owned the world designer suit, impeccable tie-do dripping with disdain. His attorney, Richard Blackwood from Blackwood and Associates, was known for defending the indefensible with surgical precision. "State your name for the record," Melissa began. "You know my name," Harold sneered. "This whole charade is beneath the Donovan family dignity. Your son pushed your daughter off a deck, paralyzing her after taking out $12 million in life insurance policies on her without her knowledge. Where exactly is your family dignity, Mr. Donovan?" The deposition lasted 8 grueling hours. Harold denied everything, claimed memory lapses, invoked the Fifth Amendment repeatedly. But Melissa methodically presented evidence, bank records, emails, phone logs, that painted a picture of deep complicity. This email from you to Tyler, dated 6 weeks before the attack, states, "The Bridget situation needs permanent resolution. Can you explain what you meant?" "I meant her attitude problem," Harold blustered, "her refusal to accept family decisions. And this wire transfer of $2 million to an account in the Caymans immediately after Bridget's fall. Unrelated business transaction. The account was closed the day Tyler was arrested. Coincidence?" Harold's attorney objected repeatedly, but the damage was done. Each lie contradicted, documented evidence, each evasion revealed guilt. Diane's deposition the next day proved even more devastating, not for us, but for her carefully constructed delusions. Faced with recordings of Tyler confessing to murders, photos of my injuries throughout childhood, and witness statements, something in her finally cracked. "I knew," she whispered, tears destroying her perfect makeup. "God help me, I always knew. But he was my baby boy, my firstborn. I thought if I loved him enough, if I protected him enough, he'd change." "You knew he murdered Danny Watson." "I suspected. Harold said it was an accident, but Tyler had that look, the same one when neighborhood pets went missing." Diane crumbled further. "I chose my son over everyone else's children, over Bridget. What kind of mother does that make me? One who'll spend the next decade in prison for conspiracy and accessory to attempted murder," Melissa responded coolly. The revelation that shook everyone came when Diane admitted Harold's abuse toward her. "Where do you think Tyler learned violence solved problems? Harold never hit the children directly, but I was his stress relief. Tyler watched. Tyler learned." Former employees testified next, painting a picture of Harold's business empire built on fraud and intimidation. Jennifer Walsh, who'd come forward after the media coverage, provided crucial testimony about Tyler's sexual assault and the subsequent cover-up. "Harold himself offered me money to disappear," she stated clearly. Said accusers in the Donovan family had a way of having accidents. After seeing what happened to Bridget, I believe he meant it. Lauren's deposition was conducted via secure video link from an undisclosed location. Her testimony, backed by years of recordings, provided the prosecution's strongest evidence of premeditation. Tyler talked about killing Bridget like discussing stock options. She testified, calculating cold practical. He'd say things like, "Once Bridget's gone, we'll buy that yacht," or "After I handle Bridget, the kids will have better inheritance prospects." Did you believe he was serious? After living with him for 10 years, absolutely. Tyler had already killed at least 4 people that I knew of. Bridget was just the next name on his list. The children's testimony, given through a child advocacy specialist, proved heartbreaking. Mason described his father teaching him to practice pushing with dolls. Sophia revealed Tyler had made her choose which toys to keep because Daddy might go away for a while. He was preparing them, the specialist explained. Classic behavior of someone who knew their crimes might catch up. Marcus Chen's deposition from federal prison added another layer. Tyler's former accomplice had flipped completely, providing detailed accounts of evidence destruction, witness intimidation, and murder planning. Tyler had a whole notebook, Marcus testified. Different ways to kill Bridget that would look accidental. Brake failure, food poisoning, drowning. He settled on the deck push because the party provided witnesses who'd been drinking. But he didn't count on Bridget surviving. Or talking. Most Donovan victims don't. Marcus looked directly at me through the video screen. I'm sorry, Bridget. Money made me stupid. Prison's given me clarity. Private investigator Monica Shaw presented her findings about grandmother Rose's murder and the 3 additional deaths she'd connected to Tyler through financial forensics and witness interviews. Each victim had something Tyler wanted: money, business advantage, or silence. He's a serial killer who used privilege as a weapon, she concluded. Without family money protecting him, he'd have been caught decades ago. The most dramatic moment came during Tyler's deposition. Shackled and flanked by guards, he'd lost weight in custody, his former golden boy looks replaced by hollow eyes and nervous tics. His new attorney, the 4th after others quit, seemed overwhelmed by his client's volatility. "Did you push your sister off the deck?" Melissa asked directly. Tyler laughed, the sound unhinged. "She fell, clumsy Bridget, always having accidents. Like your cousin Danny's accident in the pool." Tyler's eyes gleamed. Danny was weak. Natural selection, like I told that reporter. His attorney tried intervening, but Tyler was beyond control. "You want the truth? Fine. Danny beat me in front of everyone. Grandmother loved Bridget more. Jennifer wouldn't shut up about that Christmas party. They all thought they were better, but I showed them. I showed everyone." "Are you confessing to murder?" "I'm confessing to winning." Tyler slammed his shackled hands on the table. "Until precious Bridget survived. One push and she ruins everything. Typical." His attorney terminated the deposition, but the damage was catastrophic. Tyler had confessed to multiple murders on video, showing no remorse, only rage at being caught. That evening, our legal team gathered to assess the depositions. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial crimes, attempted murder, conspiracy, obstruction of justice. The federal RICO charges meant the entire Donovan empire could be seized as a criminal enterprise. Tyler handed us everything, ADA Crawford marveled. His narcissism made him confess to crimes we couldn't even prove. "What about my parents?" I asked. Harold's still denying everything despite evidence. Diane seems genuinely broken. Harold's looking at 25 to life for conspiracy and accessory charges. Diane might get 10 to 15 if she cooperates fully. Tyler. Melissa shook her head. Multiple life sentences, possibly death penalty for the murders. Detective Morrison, who'd attended every deposition, added his perspective. "This case will rewrite how Connecticut handles wealthy criminals. No more buying silence, no more disappearing evidence. The Donovan name will become synonymous with justice finally prevailing." As the team discussed trial strategy, I thought about everyone who'd testified. Jennifer finding courage years later. Lauren risking everything to protect her children. Monica switching sides when confronted with truth. Even Marcus choosing confession over complicity. Tyler thought fear made people controllable. He never understood that fear, once faced, transforms into fury. Every person he'd terrorized became a weapon against him, their testimony forging chains he couldn't break with money or threats. "We're ready for trial," Melissa declared. "Tyler Donovan terrorized people for 24 years. Time to show him what real justice looks like." I looked down at my legs, still mostly paralyzed, but tingling with returning sensation. Tyler had tried to destroy me, but I was rebuilding stronger. Each deposition, each piece of evidence, each brave testimony added steel to my spine, metaphorically speaking. The trial would be brutal, public, painful, but we had truth as our foundation and an army of survivors ready to speak it. Tyler's reign of terror was over. Court would just make it official. The knock on my hospital room door came at an unusual hour, 10 p.m., well past visiting time. Security cleared the visitor with extra scrutiny given the circumstances. When Stephanie Chen walked in, I couldn't hide my shock. Stephanie had dated Tyler in college, disappearing from his life our senior year without explanation. Now 32, with auburn hair and cautious eyes, she carried herself like someone perpetually looking over their shoulder. "I know this is unexpected." She began clutching a worn leather bag. "I've been following the trial coverage. When I saw Tyler confess to those murders..." She took a shaky breath. I have evidence you need to see. Stephanie, it's been years. Where have you been? Hiding, she said simply. Running. Trying to forget what I knew about your brother. But seeing you fight back, seeing him finally facing consequences, I can't stay silent anymore. She pulled out a small external hard drive. Tyler liked to record things. Trophy videos, he called them. He thought I didn't know about his hidden camera setup in his apartment, but I found it. Made copies before I ran. My blood chilled. Videos of what? Him planning Danny's murder. Him bragging about getting away with it. Him describing in detail what he wanted to do to you. Stephanie's hands trembled. There's more. Video from a fraternity party where he drugged a girl's drink. Another where he's beating someone with a baseball bat. I have 18 videos total. Emma, who'd been sleeping on the room's small couch, was fully awake now. You've had these for over a decade. I was 21 and terrified. Stephanie defended. Tyler told me explicitly what would happen if I ever betrayed him. Showed me photos of other girlfriends who disappeared. I believed him. Why come forward now? I asked. Because you survived. Because you're showing the world who he really is. Because I have a daughter now, and the thought of her growing up in a world where Tyler Donovan walks free. She handed me the drive. Take it. Make sure he never hurts anyone again. Melissa arrived within 20 minutes, having broken speed limits across Hartford. She immediately called Agent Kim and Detective Morrison. Within an hour, my hospital room resembled a mobile command center as they reviewed the videos on a secure laptop. The content was worse than described. Tyler at 19 calmly explaining how he'd hold Danny underwater until the bubbles stop. Tyler at 20 recording himself stalking a female student who'd rejected him. Tyler at 21 describing his fantasies about killing me in graphic detail. Morrison had to pause the playback, visibly shaken. In 30 years of police work, I've never seen someone document their crimes so thoroughly. Narcissistic personality disorder combined with sociopathy, Agent Kim observed. He kept trophies to relive his victories. We need to verify authenticity and establish chain of custody, Melissa said, already planning. Stephanie, you'll need protection. Once Tyler's defense learns about these videos, I'm not running anymore, Stephanie said firmly. I'll testify. I'll tell the jury everything. The next morning brought another unexpected ally. 3 of Tyler's former victims had connected through the media coverage and arrived together, united by shared trauma and determination. Rachel Morrison, no relation to the detective, had been Tyler's business partner until her suspicious car accident 5 years ago. She'd survived but suffered permanent injuries when her brakes failed on a clear day. I always knew Tyler sabotaged my car, she said from her wheelchair, a sight that created instant kinship between us. But I had no proof, and the Donovan lawyers threatened to destroy me if I pursued it. David Chang had attended prep school with Tyler. His story made my stomach turn. Systematic bullying that escalated to torture, including an incident where Tyler held his head in a toilet until David lost consciousness. The school covered it up, David explained. My parents were immigrants, didn't understand the system. Tyler's family donated a new library wing, and suddenly I was the troubled student making false accusations. Anna Fitzgerald had been Tyler's co-worker at his first job out of college. She'd reported him for sexual harassment and found herself fired within a week, blacklisted from the industry. HR said I was lying that Tyler was a model employee from a good family. They made me sign an NDA for a pathetic severance. But NDAs don't cover criminal testimony, right? Right, Melissa confirmed. You're all free to testify. The group had more than stories. They'd been conducting their own investigation. Rachel had documented financial irregularities in Tyler's business dealings. David had tracked down other prep school victims afraid to speak up. Anna had recordings of Tyler making threats at work. We formed a support group, Rachel explained, started connecting dots. There are at least 40 people with Tyler Donovan stories. Most are still too scared to come forward, but they're watching. If we testify successfully, others will follow, I finished. Safety in numbers. That afternoon, a nonprofit organization called Justice for Survivors reached out. They wanted to fund my experimental treatment fully and provide resources for all of Tyler's victims. "Your case is landmark," the director, Patricia Williams, explained via video call. "A wealthy serial predator finally facing justice because one victim survived and spoke up. We want to ensure you have every resource needed." "I can't accept charity," I began, but Patricia cut me off. "It's not charity. It's an investment in changing the system. Your victory becomes precedent for thousands of other cases. Besides," she smiled, "your grandmother was one of our anonymous donors for years. Consider this her final gift." The revelation stunned me. Grandmother Rose had been funding justice work while trapped in a family of criminals, another layer of her complex legacy. Support came from unexpected corporate corners, too. 3 major jewelry suppliers who'd been strong-armed by Harold over the years offered to testify about extortion and threats. Former board members of companies Harold served on provided evidence of embezzlement and fraud. "Your father made many enemies," one CEO told me. "We stayed quiet out of fear, but seeing him in handcuffs gave us courage. The business community wants the Donovan corruption exposed." Even within law enforcement, allies emerged. Officers who'd been pressured to drop cases, prosecutors who'd been threatened judges, who documented suspicious patterns, all ready to testify about systemic obstruction of justice. Judge Elizabeth Thornton introduced me to a network of judicial officials who'd been tracking wealthy criminal families for years. "The Donovans aren't unique," she explained, "but their downfall can set precedent for prosecuting others." The most surprising ally came in the form of Special Agent Sarah Mitchell from the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. She'd been studying Tyler's videos and wanted to use them for training. "Your brother is a textbook case of privileged psychopathy," she explained. "His recordings show the escalation pattern perfectly: childhood animal cruelty, adolescent violence, adult murder. With your permission, we'd like to use this case to train agents in recognizing these patterns earlier. If it helps catch the next Tyler Donovan before he kills someone, absolutely," I agreed. Lauren had been building her own network from protective custody. Other abused spouses from wealthy families reached out sharing resources and strategies. She'd connected with specialized attorneys who helped her secure full custody and begin divorce proceedings. "Tyler's arrest gave me freedom," she told me during a secure call. "But your courage gave me strength. The kids and I are in therapy rebuilding. Mason wants to be a prosecutor when he grows up. Says he wants to stop bad people like Daddy." As trial preparation intensified, our coalition of allies grew stronger. Stephanie's videos were authenticated and deemed admissible. Rachel David and Anna's testimonies were prepared with careful attention to detail. Corporate witnesses provided financial evidence. Law enforcement officials documented obstruction patterns. "Tyler thought he was untouchable because of family money and connections," Melissa observed during a strategy meeting. "He never imagined his victims would unite against him." The media coverage of our growing alliance sparked national conversation about privilege, justice, and survival. Other victims of wealthy predators began speaking up, inspired by our example. The hashtag Donovan effect trended as people shared stories of escaping abusive situations. Dr. Yamamoto called with promising news about my treatment. "The stem cells are integrating better than expected. Physical therapy is showing remarkable progress. I'm optimistic about significant mobility recovery within the year." "I'll walk into that courtroom," I promised. "Maybe with assistance, but I'll walk." "Actually," Dr. Yamamoto said carefully, "we're seeing indicators that suggest fuller recovery might be possible. Don't want to create false hope, but keep working hard." As I hung up, looking around my room filled with evidence boxes and legal documents, I felt the profound shift in power. Tyler had created enemies everywhere he went, leaving a trail of victims who'd been waiting for someone to stand up first. I hadn't just stood up. I'd been pushed down and got back up anyway. That resilience became a rallying cry for everyone Tyler had hurt. Everyone, Harold had threatened everyone the Donovan money had silenced. "Ready for tomorrow?" Melissa asked. "Jury selection begins." "We're ready," I corrected, gesturing to the photos of all our allies on the wall. "Tyler's going to face an army of his own making." The boy who drowned Danny in a pool was about to drown in testimonies from everyone he'd tried to destroy. Justice might have been delayed by decades, but it was arriving with compound interest. And I'd have a front-row seat to watch Tyler Donovan finally face the consequences of believing he was untouchable. The news alert buzzed across every phone in the courthouse simultaneously. "Breaking: federal agents freeze all Donovan family assets in largest RICO action in Connecticut history." I watched from my wheelchair in the prosecution preparation room as FBI agents, IRS officials, and federal marshals executed coordinated raids across 3 states. Every Donovan property, bank account, investment, and business holding was seized under criminal forfeiture laws. "It's happening," Agent Kim announced, entering with a satisfied expression. "Your father was arrested at Bradley International Airport attempting to board a private jet to Switzerland. Found $8 million in bearer bonds in his luggage." He was running. I asked, though I shouldn't have been surprised. "With fake passports and enough cash to disappear forever. Your mother tipped us off. Seems she's fully cooperating now." The local news showed footage of Harold being led away in handcuffs, his usual arrogance replaced by the hollow look of a man watching his empire burn. Properties I'd grown up in were wrapped in federal seizure tape. The family business headquarters swarmed with forensic accountants. 40 years of criminal enterprise dismantled in 40 minutes. Melissa marveled. The Donovan dynasty is officially over. Tyler's reaction to his father's arrest was captured on jail surveillance. He destroyed his cell, screaming about betrayal and abandonment until guards had to restrain him. His mental state, already fragile, shattered completely as he realized even Harold had abandoned him. "My father thinks he can save himself by running," Tyler ranted during a recorded call with his latest attorney. "He built this empire on my achievements. I removed every obstacle, eliminated every threat, and he leaves me to rot." His lawyer terminated the call, later filing documents suggesting an insanity defense, a strategy that backfired spectacularly when prosecutors presented Tyler's methodical planning documents spanning years. Diane, now in federal custody herself, had transformed from denial to complete cooperation. During a televised interview from prison, she appeared without makeup or pretense, looking every one of her 58 years. "I failed as a mother," she told the interviewer. "I saw Tyler hurt animals as a child and called it boyish curiosity. Saw him manipulate and threaten other children and called it leadership. When Bridget came to me with bruises, I chose not to see the truth because acknowledging it would mean admitting I'd raised a monster." "What changed your mind?" "Listening to those videos Stephanie provided, hearing my son describe murdering an 8-year-old with pride, realizing he'd been poisoning his own grandmother while I made excuses for his visits." Diane wiped her eyes. "I chose Tyler over everyone. Over Bridget, over justice, over basic humanity. Prison is less than I deserve." The financial investigation revealed staggering corruption. Harold had embezzled over $30 million from various companies. Shell corporations, layered like nesting dolls, hid money in 12 countries. The jewelry business, Grandmother Rose's legacy, had been hollowed out through fraudulent loans and false valuations. "If Tyler hadn't pushed you, they'd have bankrupted everything within 2 years," the forensic accountant explained. "Your grandmother must have suspected. That's why she changed her will so dramatically." Lauren and the children were relocated to a new safe house after Tyler's supporters made threats. She testified via closed-circuit television about finding hidden weapons in their home, detailed murder plans, and recordings of Tyler teaching Mason to lie to police. "He was grooming our son to be like him," Lauren said, her voice steady despite tears. "Teaching him that violence was power, that rules didn't apply to Donovan men. Thank God we escaped when we did." The business community's response was swift and brutal. Every company Harold had served on boards issued statements distancing themselves. Country clubs revoked memberships dating back generations. Charity galas returned donations. The Donovan name was systematically erased from Connecticut's elite landscape. "They're acting like they didn't know," I told Melissa bitterly, "like they weren't complicit in looking the other way. Public perception matters to these people more than justice," she replied. "But their statements become admissions. We'll use them." Tyler's mental deterioration accelerated as consequences mounted. During a competency evaluation, he attacked the psychiatrist, screaming about conspiracies and betrayal. He began referring to himself in third person, insisting Tyler Donovan was a character he'd played, not his real identity. Classic narcissistic collapse. Dr. Mitchell explained after reviewing the evaluation. When their false self is exposed and control is lost, some narcissists fragment completely rather than face reality. Is he competent to stand trial? Absolutely. This isn't insanity. It's rage that his mask finally fell off. More victims emerged as news of the asset freeze spread. A groundskeeper who'd been injured on our property and paid to stay quiet. A housekeeper who'd witnessed Tyler's violence and been threatened into silence. Each story added weight to the prosecution's case. The jewelry employees freed from Harold's control revealed years of wage theft and intimidation. Several had been forced to sign illegal contracts, work unpaid overtime, and submit to harassment. They formed their own coalition, pursuing separate civil actions. "Your grandmother tried to protect us," one longtime employee told me, "but your father had too much power. Seeing him arrested, it's like we can breathe again." I arranged for the jewelry business, what remained of it, to be placed in trust for employee ownership. Whatever survived the federal seizure would belong to the people who'd actually built it, not the family who'd exploited them. Public sentiment shifted dramatically as the full scope of Donovan crimes emerged. What had started as sympathy for me evolved into broader outrage about systemic privilege protecting predators. Prosecutors from other jurisdictions contacted Melissa about cold cases potentially linked to Tyler. "We've identified 12 suspicious deaths over 24 years that connect to your brother," Detective Morrison informed me. "Each victim had something Tyler wanted or posed a threat to family interests. With the evidence you've provided, we're building cases for all of them." The revelation that made national headlines came from an unexpected source. Tyler's prison cellmate, who contacted authorities with information Tyler had shared. "He bragged about kills like notches on a belt," the cellmate testified. Said his biggest regret was not making Bridget's death look more accidental. Claimed he'd perfected the art with previous victims but got sloppy because she annoyed him too much. As trial approached, Tyler made one last desperate play. Through intermediaries, he offered to confess to everything in exchange for life without parole instead of the death penalty. The deal included revealing locations of evidence for unsolved murders and providing details about Harold's criminal network. "No deal," I said firmly when prosecutors asked my opinion. "He doesn't get to bargain with his victims' lives. Those families deserve justice, not negotiation." The ADA nodded approvingly. "We have enough evidence for convictions without his cooperation. Let him face the full consequences." The empire Harold and Diane built on blood and silence was reduced to rubble. Properties were auctioned to pay restitution to victims. Bank accounts funded survivor services. The Donovan name was removed from building scholarships and charitable funds. "You did this," Patricia told me during a visit. "You brought down a dynasty that seemed untouchable." "Tyler did it," I corrected. "By pushing me off that deck, he pushed the first domino. Everything else was inevitable once the truth had momentum." As I prepared for trial, working with physical therapists to strengthen my returning mobility, I thought about the poetry of justice. Tyler had wanted me dead to secure his inheritance. Instead, he'd inherited decades in prison, while I inherited the power to dismantle everything he'd valued. The family empire hadn't just crumbled, it had been systematically demolished, its foundations exposed as rotten, its legacy transformed from privilege to cautionary tale. Tyler would watch from prison as everything he'd killed for disappeared, distributed to the victims he'd tried to silence. "Ready for opening statements?" Melissa asked as we reviewed final preparations. "Beyond ready," I replied, feeling strength in my healing legs. Time to bury the Donovan dynasty for good. The empire was already gone. The trial would just be its funeral. The Hartford Superior Courthouse had never seen crowds like those that gathered for the first day of Tyler Donovan's trial. News vans lined the street. Victim advocates held signs reading, "Justice for all Tyler's victims." Security was tripled after death threats against witnesses. I entered the courtroom in my wheelchair, though I could now stand for short periods with assistance. The decision to remain seated was strategic. Melissa wanted the jury to see clearly what Tyler had done to me. Behind me, our coalition of witnesses filled 3 rows: Stephanie Lauren via video link, Rachel in her own wheelchair, David, Anna, and dozens more who'd found courage to testify. Tyler sat at the defense table looking gaunt and unstable. His latest attorney, William Carver, had the exhausted appearance of someone who'd drawn an impossible straw. Tyler's expensive suit couldn't hide his deterioration, nervous tics muttering to himself, eyes darting constantly. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Catherine Chen," the bailiff announced. Judge Chen, known for her no-nonsense approach to wealthy defendants, had been specially assigned after 3 other judges recused themselves due to connections with the Donovan family. Her opening instructions made clear she wouldn't tolerate any theatrics or privilege plays. Etta Michelle Crawford's opening statement was a masterclass in devastating simplicity. She stood before the jury, 7 women, 5 men, diverse in age and background, and laid out the truth without embellishment. Tyler Donovan killed his 8-year-old cousin for winning a swimming race. He poisoned his grandmother for changing her will. He attempted to murder his sister for inheriting what he believed was his. Over 24 years, he left a trail of bodies, broken lives, and silenced victims. Today, those silenced voices will speak. She presented a timeline showing Tyler's escalation from childhood violence to serial murder. Each victim's photo appeared on the screen: Danny Watson, grandmother, Rose, the suspicious deaths we'd uncovered, and finally me. The defendant believed wealth made him untouchable, that his family name was a license to kill. Today, 12 citizens will prove him wrong. Carver's defense opening was painful to watch. He tried painting Tyler as a victim of mental illness, family pressure, and misunderstanding. His client undermined him immediately by laughing during mentions of the victims and shaking his head violently when Carver suggested diminished capacity. My client maintains his innocence. Carver managed, though Tyler's behavior suggested otherwise. The prosecution began with the attempted murder charge, my case. I was the first witness called, wheeling myself to the witness stand with deliberate dignity. The courtroom fell silent as I raised my right hand for the oath. "Ms. Donovan, please tell the jury what happened on July 15th. Crawford began gently. I spoke clearly without drama, letting facts carry the weight. The argument about inheritance, Tyler's rage, the push, the fall, the sensation of my spine snapping, my father screaming at me to stop faking while I lay paralyzed. "Did you see who pushed you?" "My brother, Tyler Donovan." I looked directly at him. I saw his face as he shoved me. He was smiling. Tyler exploded. "Liar, she jumped. She's always been jealous of me." Judge Chen gavelled him to silence, warning Carver to control his client. But the damage was done. The jury saw Tyler's violence firsthand. Crawford presented medical evidence. Dr. Foster testified about the spinal cord severance, showing MRI images that made several jurors wince. The physics expert demonstrated how the injury pattern could only result from being pushed with significant force. Sarah Chen, the paramedic, testified about finding me paralyzed, while my family insisted I was faking. In 20 years of emergency medicine, I've never seen family members so callous toward an injured relative. They were more concerned about the party than their daughter's paralysis. The security footage gap was addressed head-on. Marcus Chen, testifying from federal prison, admitted deleting the video on Tyler's orders. He promised me $2 million to make it disappear, said accidents happen at parties, but video makes things complicated. Then came Stephanie's videos. The courtroom watched in horrified silence as 19-year-old Tyler calmly described drowning Danny, as he detailed plans to kill me, as he bragged about previous murders. Several jurors cried during Danny's video. Others looked physically ill. Tyler tried to object, screaming about illegal recordings and privacy violations. Judge Chen had him removed from the courtroom, allowing proceedings to continue via video link from a holding cell where armed guards ensured his silence. Lauren testified about years of abuse and Tyler's escalating violence. He said killing Bridget would be easy because everyone already thought she was clumsy. He'd conditioned the family to expect her accidents. The children's therapist presented their artwork and statements in a careful, protective manner that didn't traumatize them further. Mason's drawings of his father practicing pushing were particularly damning. Rachel Morrison testified about her brake failure, presenting the mechanic's report that showed clear sabotage. David Chang described the systematic torture he'd endured. Anna Fitzgerald played recordings of Tyler's workplace threats. Each victim built the pattern. Tyler eliminated anyone who challenged, threatened, or simply inconvenienced him. The prosecution presented financial records showing he benefited from each death or injury. The insurance policies on my life were explained in detail, establishing clear motive. Harold testified via video from federal prison, trying to maintain innocence, but crumbling under Crawford's cross-examination. Bank records contradicted his claims. Phone logs showed coordination with Tyler. His attempt to flee the country spoke louder than any denial. "You knew your son was dangerous," Crawford stated. "I knew he was ambitious," Harold hedged. "Ambitious, is that what you call murdering children?" Diane's testimony was devastating for the defense. Broken by guilt and facing her own prison sentence, she admitted everything. "We created a monster and fed it for 30 years. Every time Tyler hurt someone, we made it disappear. We taught him he was above consequences. Did you know he pushed Bridget?" I suspected, but admitting it would mean admitting everything else. She looked at me with tears streaming. "I'm so sorry, Bridget. You deserved a mother who protected you." The forensic accountant detailed the financial crimes: embezzlement, fraud, money laundering. The FBI presented evidence of interstate flight conspiracy and racketeering. The medical examiner testified about grandmother Rose's poisoning, showing toxicology results consistent with chronic digitalis administration. Tyler's defense was pitiful. Carver called character witnesses who were quickly discredited. Business associates who'd been threatened into testimony, friends who admitted they were terrified of him. The psychiatrist testified Tyler was competent to stand trial, destroying the insanity defense. Tyler insisted on testifying against all legal advice. What followed was a narcissistic meltdown of epic proportions. He claimed everyone was lying, that he was the real victim, that the family conspiracy was against him, not by him. "They're all jealous," he ranted. "Danny was weak. Grandmother was old. Bridget deserved it for stealing my inheritance. I'm Tyler Donovan. I don't apologize for being superior." Crawford's cross-examination was surgical. Superior. "You pushed your paralyzed sister off a deck. How is that superior?" "She survived when she shouldn't have. That's the only mistake I made." The courtroom gasped. Tyler had just confessed on the stand. "So you did push her?" "Of course I pushed her, but it was justified. She took what was mine." Carver put his head in his hands as Tyler continued confessing to crime after crime, his narcissistic rage overriding any legal strategy. By the time Judge Chen mercifully ended his testimony, Tyler had admitted to 4 murders and multiple attempted murders. Closing arguments were almost anticlimactic after Tyler's self-destruction. Crawford simply reviewed the evidence. Testimony from dozens of witnesses, financial documents, videos, and Tyler's own confession. The defendant told you himself. He pushed his sister off a deck because she inherited what he wanted. He shows no remorse, only rage that he was caught. Society has one way to stop predators, like Tyler Donovan: conviction and imprisonment for life. Carver's closing was brief, essentially throwing himself on the jury's mercy and suggesting mental illness despite no supporting evidence. Tyler undermined him again by laughing during mentions of his victims. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. As they filed back in, I gripped Emma's hand. Lauren watched via video link her children safely at school. Our coalition of survivors held their breath. On the charge of attempted murder in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of murder in the first degree in the death of Daniel Watson, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of murder in the first degree in the death of Rose Donovan, we find the defendant guilty. 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 47 charges. 47 guilty verdicts. Tyler watched in stunned silence as his life was measured in convictions. The serial killer who'd hidden behind privilege for decades was finally officially a convicted murderer. Judge Chen scheduled sentencing for the following month, denying bail and ordering Tyler to maximum security imprisonment. As guards led him away, he turned to me with pure hatred. "This isn't over," he snarled. "I'm Tyler Donovan." "No," I said clearly, my voice carrying across the courtroom. "You're inmate number 47381, and you always will be." The courtroom erupted in subdued celebration. Victims hugged, lawyers shook hands. Justice delayed so long had finally arrived with interest. Outside, facing the media circus, I stood from my wheelchair with Emma's support. My legs shook but held as I addressed the cameras. Today, 47 guilty verdicts said money can't buy innocence, power can't silence truth, and pushing someone down doesn't mean they'll stay down. Thank you to everyone who stood with me. We did this together. As we left the courthouse, I thought about grandmother Rose Danny, all of Tyler's victims who couldn't see this day. They had their justice now. Tyler Donovan, the golden boy who believed he was untouchable, would spend the rest of his life in a cage. The trial was over. The healing could truly begin. 1 month after the guilty verdicts, the Hartford courthouse was once again packed for Tyler Donovan's sentencing. I entered on my own feet this time, using a walker but standing tall. The experimental treatment had exceeded all expectations. Sensation had returned to my legs, and mobility improved daily. Dr. Yamamoto called it miraculous. I called it justice manifesting physically. Tyler appeared shackled and diminished the month in maximum security, having stripped away his last pretenses of superiority. His parents, Harold and Diane, were brought from federal custody to witness their son's fate. Harold still defiant, Diane openly weeping. Judge Chen reviewed the pre-sentencing reports with grim precision. "Mr. Donovan, you've been convicted of 3 murders, 1 attempted murder conspiracy fraud, and 43 additional felonies. The pre-sentencing investigation reveals potential involvement in 6 other suspicious deaths. You've shown no remorse, accepted no responsibility, and continued threatening witnesses even from custody." She looked directly at Tyler. "You represent the worst of privilege. Someone who believed wealth placed you above law, above morality, above the value of human life. This court has heard from 27 of your victims. Each one deserves justice." The victim impact statements began. I went first, standing at the podium without assistance for the first time since the fall. "Tyler, you pushed me off a deck believing you'd killed me. You miscalculated. Every day I couldn't walk, I grew stronger. Every surgery, every therapy session, every moment of pain became fuel for justice. You created the very weapon that would destroy you, a survivor with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for." I looked at him steadily. "You took my spine but gave me a backbone. You stole my legs but taught me to stand. You tried to silence me but amplified my voice. Your greatest cruelty became my greatest strength. Lauren spoke via video, their children visible behind her. "You terrorized our family for years, but we're free now. The kids are in therapy healing from your influence. They know violence isn't strength. They're learning empathy, kindness, everything you lack. They'll grow up to be everything you're not." Rachel Morrison wheeled herself forward. "You sabotaged my car because I was better at business than you. The accident took my legs but not my spirit. I've built a new company employing other disabled entrepreneurs. We're thriving while you rot." Victim after victim spoke. David Chang about overcoming trauma. Anna Fitzgerald about rebuilding her career. Jennifer Walsh about finding her voice. Each testimony revealed not just Tyler's cruelty, but their triumph over it. Patricia spoke for Danny Watson, her voice breaking. "He was 8 years old. He loved swimming dinosaurs and chocolate chip cookies. He would have been 32 now. Maybe married, maybe a father. You stole his entire future for the crime of beating you in a race." When victims finished, Ada Crawford presented the state's sentencing recommendation. The defendant has shown a pattern of escalating violence spanning 24 years. He's murdered at least 3 people, attempted to murder his sister, and shows no capacity for rehabilitation. We request the maximum sentence on all counts to run consecutively. Tyler's attorney made a weak plea for mercy, citing mental health issues and family pressure. Tyler undermined him immediately by interrupting. "I don't want mercy," he shouted. "I want recognition. I eliminated weakness. I proved superiority. If I could do it again, I'd push Bridget harder." Judge Chen's expression hardened. "Mr. Donovan, you've just demonstrated exactly why society needs protection from you." She proceeded with sentencing. For the murder of Daniel Watson, a child whose only crime was excellence, life without parole. For the murder of Rose Donovan, who loved you despite knowing what you were, life without parole. For the attempted murder of Bridget Donovan, 40 years. She continued through each charge sentences, stacking consecutively. The final tally, 3 life sentences plus 280 years, no possibility of parole. "You'll die in prison, Mr. Donovan. You'll never harm another person. You'll never benefit from your family's wealth. You'll spend whatever years remain understanding what it means to be truly powerless." Tyler screamed obscenities as guards dragged him away. Harold was led back to serve his 25-year sentence for conspiracy and fraud. Diane would serve 10 years with possibility of parole in 7 if she continued cooperating. Outside the courthouse, our coalition gathered for what many called a celebration, though it felt more like a memorial. Justice had been served, but it couldn't resurrect the dead or undo the trauma. "What now?" David Chang asked. "We got justice. What comes next?" "Healing," I said simply, "and helping others get their own justice." The Bridget Donovan Foundation launched the following week, funded by the liquidated Donovan assets and my inheritance from Grandmother Rose. Our mission supporting survivors of privileged predators, funding spinal cord research, and advocating for judicial reform. The jewelry business transferred to employee ownership became a model for ethical transformation. Workers who'd been exploited now shared profits and decision-making. Several hired other survivors, creating a community of recovery. I underwent 3 more surgeries over 6 months. Each procedure built on the last, reconnecting neural pathways, strengthening regeneration. Physical therapy remained grueling, but progress was undeniable. 8 months after Tyler pushed me, I took my first unassisted steps. "Impossible," one visiting doctor murmured, watching me walk across the therapy room. "So is getting justice against the Donovans," I replied. "I'm redefining impossible." Lauren and the children moved back to Connecticut after Tyler's sentencing, no longer needing to hide. Mason and Sophia attended therapy twice weekly, slowly overcoming their father's influence. Lauren started training as a domestic violence counselor, wanting to help others escape what she'd survived. "Tyler gave me one gift," she told me during a visit. "He showed me exactly what kind of parent not to be. My kids will grow up knowing love without conditions, strength without violence." The Foundation's first major initiative partnered with law enforcement to create the Donovan Protocol, procedures for investigating suspicious deaths among wealthy families. Detective Morrison led training sessions teaching officers to recognize patterns Tyler had exemplified. "Rich predators aren't smarter," he explained to a room of detectives. "They just have better lawyers and intimidation tactics. Look past the money, follow the evidence, protect the victims." Stephanie Chen became our lead investigator, using her tech skills to help other survivors document abuse safely. Her courage in providing Tyler's videos had inspired dozens of others to come forward with their own evidence. "I hid for 10 years, she said during one Foundation meeting, "but hiding gave him power. Truth is the only antidote to predators like Tyler." A year after the trial, I stood in Grandmother Rose's garden, now the Foundation's headquarters. The estate that had housed so much evil was transformed into a beacon of hope. Meeting rooms where Harold had planned crimes now hosted survivor support groups. Tyler's former bedroom became a children's therapy space. Rachel Morrison arrived for our board meeting, having become our accessibility consultant. David Chang, now a successful advocate, brought proposals for expanding services. Anna Fitzgerald had created a legal fund for victims facing NDAs. "Look what we built from ashes," Rachel said, surveying the transformed estate. "Tyler thought he was destroying us. Instead, he created an army." Judge Chen visited to discuss judicial reform initiatives. "Your case exposed systematic failures. We're implementing mandatory training on recognizing privileged violence. No more wealthy predators hiding behind donations and connections." The Foundation received thousands of applications for help. Each story echoed familiar themes: powerful abusers, institutional blindness, silenced victims. We funded legal representation therapy, safe housing, whatever survivors needed to fight back. One case particularly moved me: a young woman whose CEO brother had pushed her downstairs, leaving her partially paralyzed. The parallels were eerie, but this time she wouldn't fight alone. Our lawyers took her case pro bono. Our survivors shared their experiences. Our resources ensured she wouldn't be silenced by wealth. "You saved my life," she told me after winning her case. "Not just legally, you showed me survival was possible." Tyler, meanwhile, deteriorated in maximum security. Reports indicated he'd been placed in solitary after attacking other inmates. His delusions of grandeur crashed against the reality of life as inmate 47581. No money to buy protection, no family name to invoke, no violence without consequence. He wrote me once a rambling letter claiming he'd made me famous, that I owed him gratitude for creating my purpose. I didn't respond, but I kept the letter as a reminder of how completely he'd misunderstood power. He thought it came from fear and force. True power came from surviving, speaking truth, and lifting others. 2 years after that fateful birthday party, I walked unassisted into the rehabilitation center, where I'd learned to fight back. The spinal unit patients erupted in celebration. I was their proof that impossible recoveries happened. "You did it," Sarah, my former roommate, breathed. "You actually did it." "We did it," I corrected, looking at the fighters around me. Every exercise, every testimony, every moment we chose recovery over resignation. We're all miracles. Dr. Yamamoto presented me with an unexpected opportunity, joining his research team to expand experimental treatments. My unique recovery and patient perspective could help develop new protocols. From patient to practitioner, he smiled. Another impossible transformation. I accepted immediately. Tyler had tried to end my story with a push. Instead, he'd started a new chapter where I'd help others reclaim their mobility, their voices, their lives. Standing in that spinal unit surrounded by survivors and warriors, I thought about the strange mathematics of justice. Tyler took my ability to walk but gave me the power to run, toward truth, justice, and healing. He'd stolen years from his victims but created decades of positive change. 3 life sentences plus 280 years. Tyler would die in a cage while everyone he'd tried to destroy soared free. That was true justice. Not just punishment for the guilty, but triumph for the survivors. The boy who drowned Danny in a pool had drowned in his own cruelty, and we, his intended victims, had learned to swim in deeper waters than he'd ever imagined. The ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Rose Donovan Center for Survivor Advocacy took place on a brilliant October morning exactly 1 year after Tyler received his life sentences. I stood at the podium, no walker needed, though I kept a cane for longer distances, a small reminder of how far I'd come. Today we transform a monument to privilege into a sanctuary for survivors, I announced to the gathered crowd. The estate that had witnessed so much violence now housed counseling rooms, legal clinics, emergency shelter, and hope. Behind me, Lauren cut the ribbon with Mason and Sophia at her sides. The children had grown remarkably in the year since their father's imprisonment. Mason, now 10, and focused on his studies. Sophia, 8, and blossoming with confidence they'd never shown under Tyler's shadow. Aunt Bridget kept her promise. Mason announced proudly to anyone who'd listen, "She's teaching me to swim and I'm not scared anymore." The foundation had grown beyond my wildest dreams. We'd helped prosecute 17 cases of privileged violence, funded 23 survivors through rehabilitation, and changed laws in 3 states. But today wasn't about statistics. It was about faces in the crowd who'd found justice through our work. Among them stood Daniel Martinez, the doctor who'd become far more than my physician. We'd met when he joined Dr. Yamamoto's team 6 months earlier, bringing expertise in trauma psychology alongside spinal cord innovation. His gentle patience during my treatment evolved into deeper connection. "You're nervous," he observed, appearing at my elbow as I greeted guests. "Terrified," I admitted. "It's easier to fight predators than to accept you've won." His warm brown eyes crinkled with understanding. "Trauma teaches us to expect the next blow. Peace feels dangerous because we've never known it." He squeezed my hand gently. "But you're safe now. Tyler's gone. Your parents are imprisoned. This is your life to build." The first time Daniel asked me to dinner, a real date, not a medical consultation, I'd panicked. 28 years of Tyler's violence had convinced me I didn't deserve gentleness. But Daniel persisted with the same patience he showed in therapy, never pushing, simply present. "I see you," he'd said during one late-night conversation. "Not the victim, not the survivor, not the advocate, just Bridget, and she's worth knowing." Now watching him chat with Foundation board members, I felt something I'd never imagined possible, uncomplicated happiness. No fear of violence, no watching for danger, just peace. Patricia approached with champagne, looking years younger than when she'd first visited my hospital room. "Your grandmother would be so proud. You've built something beautiful from the ashes." "We built it," I corrected. "None of this happens alone." The Foundation's success had attracted national attention. 60 Minutes had featured our work. Congress invited me to testify about judicial reform. Universities requested lectures on recognizing privileged predators. Each platform amplified our message. Wealth didn't excuse violence, and survivors deserve justice, regardless of their attacker's bank account. Rachel Morrison wheeled over with exciting news. The medical equipment company wants to sponsor 10 spinal cord patients through experimental treatment. They were moved by our stories. "That's incredible. Have you told Dr. Yamamoto?" "He's already screening candidates." Rachel grinned. "Also that tech CEO who pushed his sister just got 40 years. Our legal team is unstoppable." The Foundation operated on multiple fronts now. Stephanie Chen ran our documentation program, teaching survivors to safely gather evidence. David Chang led legislative advocacy, pushing for stronger penalties for privilege-enabled violence. Anna Fitzgerald managed our legal fund, ensuring money never silenced another victim. "We're a machine," Stephanie said proudly during our board meeting. "Tyler created his worst nightmare. Organized, funded, relentless opposition to predators like him." The center's opening celebration continued into evening. Survivors shared stories, children played in gardens where I'd once bled, and hope replaced the terror that had permeated these grounds for generations. "May I steal you for a moment?" Daniel asked as sunset painted the sky crimson. We walked to the renovated pool house, once the site of Danny's murder, now a children's therapy center filled with art and light. The transformation felt symbolic of everything we'd accomplished. "I have something to tell you," Daniel began, uncharacteristically nervous. "I've been offered a position at Johns Hopkins running their new spinal rehabilitation program. It's an incredible opportunity, but my heart sank. After everything, losing him felt unbearably cruel. "But I can't imagine going without you." He took my hands, his surgeon's fingers gentle but steady. "I know we've only been together 8 months. I know you're still healing. But Bridget, you've become my home. Would you consider coming with me? The foundation can operate remotely, and Baltimore has incredible resources for expansion." I stared at him, processing. Leave Connecticut. Leave the site of so much trauma, but also so much triumph. "You don't have to answer now," he added quickly. "I just wanted you to know you're part of my decision. Whatever you choose will make it work." "Yes," I said, surprising myself with the certainty. "Yes, I'll come with you." His joy was radiant. "Really? Tyler trapped me here with fear. Staying because I choose to is different from staying because I'm afraid to leave." I smiled, feeling lighter. "Besides, Baltimore could use a survivor center. We'll expand the foundation, help more people." He kissed me, then gentle and sure, and I marveled at feeling safe in someone's arms. Tyler had taught me touch meant pain. Daniel proved it could mean comfort. Lauren found us later, beaming with her own news. "The divorce is final. I'm officially Lauren Martinez again, and..." She held up an acceptance letter. "Georgetown social work program accepted me. The kids and I are moving to D.C. "That's wonderful. When?" "January, close enough to visit, far enough to build fresh." She hugged me tightly. "We're really doing it, aren't we? Building lives Tyler can't touch." The evening's final surprise came from an unexpected source. Judge Chen approached with a young woman I recognized from news coverage, Melissa Yang, whose investment banker brother had pushed her from a high-rise balcony, leaving her paralyzed. "Ms. Donovan." Melissa said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Your testimony at Congress convinced my family to stop protecting my brother. He was convicted last week. 30 years. I wanted to thank you personally." "You don't need to thank me. You survived. You spoke truth. That takes incredible courage. Your foundation gave me that courage. Knowing I wasn't alone, that someone else had survived this exact violence." Tears flowed freely. "May I volunteer here? I want to help others the way you helped me." "We'd be honored," I said, meaning it deeply. As the celebration wound down, I stood in Grandmother Rose's study, now my office, looking at everything we'd built. Photos covered one wall, survivors who'd found justice, volunteers who'd joined our mission lives, reclaimed from violence. Tyler's photo was notably absent. He existed now only as a case number, a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happened when privilege protected predators. Reports from prison indicated he'd been transferred to psychiatric containment after multiple violent incidents. His delusions of grandeur had evolved into complete break from reality. "He's convinced you're visiting him," Harold had written in his single letter to me. "Talks to empty air, claiming you're thanking him for making you famous. The other inmates think he's insane." I hadn't responded. Both parents would die in prison. Harold from a heart attack, 2 years into his sentence, Diane by her own hand, overcome with guilt. Their empire dissolved, their legacy reduced to cautionary tale, their son a madman in solitary confinement. But from their ashes we'd grown gardens. The foundation helped dozens of families. The center would shelter hundreds. Laws were changing. Predators were being prosecuted. Survivors were being believed. "Ready to go home?" Daniel asked, finding me in contemplation. Home. The word felt foreign but welcome. Not the mansion where I'd cowered from Tyler's rage, but a small house near the hospital where Daniel cooked dinner and we planned our future, where Mason and Sophia visited for swimming lessons, where love meant safety, not control. Almost, I said, taking one last look around, I just wanted to remember. Remember what? That I won. We won. Tyler pushed me off that deck to kill me, and instead he gave me wings. I linked my arm through his. Now let's go build something beautiful in Baltimore. As we drove away from the center, I glimpsed my reflection in the window, scarred but strong walking when doctors said I'd never stand loved, when Tyler said I deserved only pain. The girl who'd lain paralyzed on decorative rocks had become a woman who moved mountains. Tyler was wrong about everything, but especially about strength. He thought it came from pushing others down. True strength came from lifting others up, and I planned to spend the rest of my life proving it one survivor at a time. The boy who'd tried to destroy me had instead created his own destroyer, but more importantly, he'd created a builder, a healer, a voice for the voiceless, and that voice would echo long after his screams faded in solitary confinement. I was Bridget Donovan. I survived. I thrived. And my story was just beginning. 5 years. It seemed impossible that so much time had passed since Tyler pushed me off that deck. Yet here, I stood in the garden of the Baltimore Center for Survivor Justice, watching the space fill with hundreds of people whose lives had been touched by our work. My legs, once paralyzed and given no hope of recovery, carried me steadily across the lawn. The experimental treatment had succeeded beyond all projections. I could run, dance, climb stairs. Dr. Yamamoto called it the most complete recovery in spinal cord injury history. I called it proof that doctors don't know everything about human resilience. "Ready for your speech?" Daniel asked, adjusting my necklace. Grandmother Rose's locket I wore for important occasions. His wedding ring caught the light as he moved, matching the one on my finger from our ceremony 2 years ago. As ready as someone can be for their own wedding reception / foundation gala / miracle celebration, I laughed, still giddy from the morning ceremony. We'd married in the Hopkins Chapel with only family, chosen family, present. Lauren stood as my maid of honor, her social work degree proudly earned, and already changing lives. Mason and Sophia, now 15 and 13, served as ring bearers. The children Tyler had terrorized were becoming compassionate, accomplished young adults. "Aunt Bridget," Sophia called out, rushing over in her bridesmaid dress. "The news crew wants to interview you about the new legislation." The Survivor Justice Act had passed Congress 3 days ago, mandating stricter sentences for privilege-enabled violence and creating federal funding for survivor services. My testimony, along with dozens of other survivors, had swayed even the most skeptical legislators. "Tell them I'll speak after the ceremony," I said, hugging her. "This day is about celebration, not just advocacy." The garden filled with faces that told our story. Rachel Morrison, now walking with advanced prosthetics, ran our West Coast operations. David Chang had become a nationally recognized speaker on trauma recovery. Anna Fitzgerald's legal fund had helped over 200 survivors escape NDAs and seek justice. Stephanie Chen approached with her tablet, ever the efficient operations director. "The documentary crew needs you for one final interview. They want to capture your thoughts 5 years later." The documentary, Pushed a Story of Survival and Justice, had premiered at Sundance to standing ovations. It followed my journey from that birthday party through recovery trial and building the foundation. More importantly, it showcased dozens of survivors who'd found strength to fight back. After the toasts, I promised, let me have one normal wedding moment first. But normal had never been my story. Even this celebration carried deeper meaning. We'd scheduled it for July 15th, the anniversary of Tyler's attack, transforming a date of trauma into one of triumph. Detective Morrison, now retired and volunteering with our legal advocacy program, clinked his glass for attention. If I could have everyone's attention for a rather unusual wedding toast. The crowd quieted familiar faces mixed with new allies. Prosecutors who'd taken on impossible cases, doctors who'd revolutionized spinal treatment, legislators who'd changed laws, survivors who'd become warriors. 5 years ago, I responded to what seemed like a routine domestic incident, Morrison began. I found Bridget Donovan paralyzed on the ground while her family insisted she was faking. Today I watch her dance at her wedding, having built an empire of justice from the ashes of violence. He raised his glass. Tyler Donovan thought he was pushing his sister to her death. Instead, he pushed her toward her destiny. Because of Bridget's courage, over 300 predators are now behind bars. Thousands of survivors have found help. Laws have changed. Lives have been saved. To Bridget and Daniel, he continued, voice thick with emotion. May your marriage be as strong as your spirits and as transformative as your work. The crowd erupted in applause. I wiped tears, overwhelmed by the journey from that moment of terror to this moment of joy. Daniel pulled me close, whispering, "No crying until after the photographer leaves." Patricia stepped forward next, her toast more personal. Rose Donovan was my sister-in-law and friend. She died believing she'd failed to protect Bridget from Tyler. Today I know she's watching with pride as her granddaughter not only survived, but ensured no other family would suffer in silence. She produced a wrapped gift. Rose left this for Bridget's wedding day with instructions to open it only when she'd found true love and true purpose. Inside was a leather journal and a letter in grandmother's handwriting. My dearest Bridget, if you're reading this, you've found what I always prayed for. Love that heals rather than hurts, purpose beyond survival. I write this. Knowing Tyler's darkness grows while my time shrinks, but believing light will ultimately prevail. This journal contains everything. Names, dates, evidence I couldn't use while alive. But more than that, it contains my dreams for you. That you'd break free, that you'd find joy, that you'd save others as I couldn't save you. Build something beautiful, my darling. Let our family name mean justice, not violence. Let Tyler's cruelty forge your compassion. Let my failures fuel your success. All my love across time and space, Grandmother Rose. The journal was indeed explosive. Detailed evidence of crimes we'd never discovered, names of victims. We hadn't found financial trails we'd missed. Even from beyond, Grandmother Rose was helping us seek justice. She knew, I whispered to Daniel. She knew I'd need this someday. Lauren spoke next, her confidence a sharp contrast to the broken woman who'd testified via video link 5 years ago. Tyler Donovan was the worst thing that ever happened to me. He was also in the strangest way the catalyst for the best. Without his evil, I'd never have found my strength. Without Bridget's courage, I'd never have found my voice. She turned to her children. Mason and Sophia lost a father but gained a village. They've learned that real strength comes from lifting others, not pushing them down. Tyler's legacy ends with them. They choose love over violence, compassion over cruelty. As the toasts continued, I noticed a news alert on someone's phone. Tyler had been found dead in his cell that morning, apparent suicide after years of deteriorating mental health. The boy, who'd believed he was superior to everyone, had died alone, unmourned, his delusions of grandeur reduced to a prison number. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no sorrow, just a sense of ending. Tyler had been dead to me since the trial. His physical death merely confirmed what we'd already known. His story was over, while ours continued to grow. "Are you okay?" Daniel asked, noticing my distraction. "Tyler's dead," I said quietly. "Suicide this morning." He absorbed this, then asked, "Do you need a moment?" I considered, then shook my head. "No, he doesn't get to darken this day. He chose his ending. We're choosing life." The reception continued with dinner, dancing, and joy. I took my first dance with Daniel to Rise Up, the song that had become my anthem during recovery. As we swayed, I marveled at feeling safe in someone's arms, at building a life free from fear. No regrets, Daniel asked as the song ended. Only one, I admitted. That Danny and Grandmother Rose aren't here to see this. They are, he said firmly. In every survivor, we help every law, we change every predator, we stop. They're in the work. Mason asked for the next dance, now taller than me, and headed to Yale in the fall. Aunt Bridget, I've decided my major. Criminal justice with a focus on victim advocacy. I want to be like you. Be better than me, I said, proud beyond words. Be the prosecutor who believes victims first time. Be the system Tyler never had to face. As the evening progressed, survivors shared their stories. A young woman who'd escaped her abusive CEO brother thanks to our legal fund. A paralyzed man who'd walked again through our medical program. Families reunited after breaking cycles of violence. Every person here is proof that pushing someone down doesn't keep them down, I said during my speech. Tyler believed violence was power. We've proven love is stronger. He thought wealth granted immunity. We've proven justice reaches everyone. He tried to silence me. Instead, he gave me a megaphone. I looked across the crowd. Prosecutors, advocates, survivors, warriors. 5 years ago, I lay paralyzed while my father screamed at me to stop faking. Today, I stand on legs doctors said would never work again, surrounded by chosen family, married to a man who sees strength in my scars. We've built something Tyler could never understand, a community where vulnerability is courage, where surviving is winning, where lifting others is the only real power. I raised my glass. To everyone who refused to stay down, to everyone who spoke truth, to everyone who chose healing over hatred. The crowd responded with thunderous applause. Later, as Daniel and I prepared to leave for our honeymoon, I stopped at the memorial wall we'd created. Photos of those we'd lost to violence, including Danny and Grandmother Rose. We did it, I whispered to their images. We brought down the empire and built something better. A young woman approached hesitantly, barely 20 bruises still visible beneath carefully applied makeup. Ms. Donovan, I'm Emma Winters. My brother, he's like Tyler. Rich, violent, protected. I don't know what to do. I took her hands gently. You survive. You document. You reach out to us. You're not alone anymore. But he's so powerful. Tyler Donovan owned judges and politicians. He's dead in a prison cell while I'm dancing at my wedding. Power isn't what they think it is. I gave her my direct number. Call tomorrow. We'll help. As our car pulled away toward our honeymoon, I looked back at the center, our second location with 3 more in development. Thousands of survivors finding justice, laws changing nationwide, the Donovan name now synonymous with survivor advocacy instead of violence. Thank you. I whispered to the universe, to Grandmother Rose, to that girl who'd lain broken on decorative rocks but refused to surrender. Tyler had pushed me off a deck trying to kill me. Instead, he'd pushed me into purpose, into love, into a life bigger than anything I'd imagined. Every step I took on legs he'd tried to destroy was a victory. Every survivor we helped was vindication. Every moment of joy was resistance. The boy who drowned our cousin, believing it made him powerful, had drowned in his own hatred. But we who survived him, we learned to swim in deeper waters, to build bridges, where he built walls to rise every time someone tried to push us down. 5 years after Tyler Donovan tried to end my story, I was writing chapters he could never imagine. And the best part, I was teaching others to write their own. The girl who'd been pushed was gone. In her place stood a woman who pushed back. Against injustice, against silence, against anyone who thought violence was victory. And she was just getting started. If you've stayed with me through this journey, you've witnessed how one push intended to destroy became the catalyst for justice. But this isn't just my story. It's the story of every person who's been silenced by powerful predators. Every survivor told their truth didn't matter. Every victim who fought back despite the odds. To those still trapped in cycles of violence, you are not alone. Document everything. Reach out for help. Your survival is the first victory. To those who've escaped but carry the scars, your pain is valid. Your healing matters. Your voice could save someone else. To everyone who's watched someone suffer and felt helpless, believe survivors, support them, stand with them against systems that protect predators. I have a question for you. Have you or someone you know faced violence from those who thought they were untouchable? What gave you the strength to keep going? Share your thoughts in the comments. Every story shared weakens the culture of silence that protects predators. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe to stay connected with our community of survivors and advocates. Share this video with anyone who needs to know they're not alone, that survival is possible, that pushing back is powerful. Thank you for witnessing my journey from victim to victor. Thank you for believing that truth matters more than money, that justice delayed doesn't mean justice denied. Thank you for being part of the movement that ensures no one fights alone. Remember, they can push us down, but we decide whether to stay down, and together we rise. Until next time, keep fighting, keep healing, and keep lifting others. With love and unbreakable spirit, Bridget.